Thank you. I'd like to call to order the City of St. Helena regular City Council meeting Tuesday, April 9th, 2019. I apologize, we're a little late. We came out of a closed session, and we'll get to that in a minute. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would like to ask Mr. McKelly if he might lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We'll now have the roll call.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Here.
Vice Mayor Doreen.
Here.
Councilmember Chateau.
Here.
Knutson.
Present.
Coberstein.
Here.
And now we're going to have public forum, and this is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on matters of municipal concern not on the agenda. Each person's comments shall be limited to 4 minutes. Each person is entitled to speak on any non-agendized item only once at any meeting. Brief questions by council members for clarifications may be posed and answered, and city council members may make requests that items be placed on future agendas, but in accordance with state law, no substantive discussion or action may take place unless and until the matter properly appears on the agenda. Is there any public comment at this point? Hi, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, City Council. My name is Kennedy Irvin, and I am a freshman at New Tech High School in Napa. I stand before you in representation of the next generation, your children, to say that for every day that we continue to ignore the terrific threats of fossil fuels and overconsumption of our land, the worse these issues of environmental destruction will become. Regardless of one's views on the reality of climate change, we all need to understand that what we are doing to the earth is incredibly wrong. It is important that we, as a whole, can find a common ground in order to preserve this earth for the future generations. Must we say goodbye to the earth you yourselves inherited? It is time our leaders recognize the reality of our climate crisis and demand timely, effective solutions on the largest scale possible. My generation can no longer wait. The rules have changed. The climate is in a full-scale meltdown, and yet our leaders continue to issue permits to cut down our forests, condemning the future of this planet. If we cannot manage to communicate in a timely and effective manner to reverse these detrimental climate issues, then our environment is truly doomed. For every tree that we rip out of the ground, the worse our air will become, the more rock slides, fires, and droughts we will have. I ask all of you to take a moment and think about the past, the millions of years leading up to this moment. The earth is truly a miracle. Its beauty and capacity to hold life is so astounding and worthy of respect and protection. Think back onto your childhoods, to your earliest encounters with nature, running through shallow streams or listening to the rain or laying stretched out on a field on a sunny day. Moments like these are unforgettable, and it is our duty as humans to pass down that beauty to the future, to share it with our children, moments that are too magnificent to disappear. We can no longer turn our backs on this crisis. The time has come for us to band together, despite our differences, and be the change that the world needs, the change that we want to see in the world. I am here in representation of the youth to ask you, City Council members, to recognize our current climate emergency and commit to a strong climate leadership in regards to a clean, sustainable future. We are running out of time to reverse the detrimental effects of climate change, and while this has and will continue to be an incredibly time-inclusive issue, we don't have a choice in protecting the future. My generation is working hard to have a safe and sustainable future, but we need your support and tolerance in this fight for the future. So far, my team and I have written our own climate action resolution, which we will be presenting to the Board of Education in April. And we also ask that the City Council can commit to sharing their own climate emergency resolution on Earth Day. We hope to work with you, the board, on climate issues such as this to preserve the beauty and hope for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for hearing my comments. My name is Margaret Smetana. I've lived in the Napa Valley for 27 years. Actually, I haven't lived in any place longer in my life, even my parents' house. So this is really my home. I want to just, actually, I'm here to support that young lady and all of her friends and colleagues. I'm here in support of the students in their carefully considered and bold response to climate change. To be proactive in preventing the most severe impacts of climate change, 98% of scientists have made the goal specific. To cut greenhouse gas emissions and to capture carbon already trapped in our atmosphere to stabilize the climate within the next 10 years. I am a volunteer with Napa Climate Now. Also, I forgot to introduce that, and we will be with you in this. Richard Attenborough, who, by the way, has a new 8-part series Netflix just launched called Our Planet, and it is telling you everything you need to know about how magnificent it is and what stands in the balance over the next 10 years. Richard Attenborough told the world delegates last fall at the UN climate talks in Poland, right now we're facing a man-made disaster of global scale, our greatest threat in thousands of years. Climate change is that threat. It's running faster than we are, and we've got to catch up. We're playing catch up, basically, sooner rather than later. And we must lead, and you must lead. This is what we're looking for, our leaders, true leaders. We have the same job that Richard spoke about in Poland here in our region. Extreme weather events will be the norm. Not just fires, but almost unstoppable firestorms. It's a crisis, and it's here now. I have a personal story about this because I lost my home in the middle of the night, October 2017, in the Atlas fire. And I hope that you and those you care most about never have to go through that kind of terror. I don't want anyone to go through it. That kind of loss. It was a wake-up call, though, for me in ways that I never expected, and it actually launched me into this activity that I've been buried in since January, and talking to everybody I can. It was really, the fire was actually a metaphor for climate change, in a way, because I didn't see it coming. I thought I knew that we get fires from time to time, but I really didn't see it as being anything. I locked my door like I was coming back after the fire was put out. I ran back in because I didn't have anything, not even my phone. And CAL FIRE said, if you run, you can. I locked my door again when I came out. Again, habit. Well, they'll put out the fire and it'll be okay. Because we're good at responding once the emergencies happen, but we're not as good preparing and preventing and responding in advance, and that's what we have to do now with climate change. Another reason for taking action myself is a bunch of bright, hopeful, and worried nieces and nephews that I help raise, with their whole lives ahead of them. They're a little older than Kennedy there, but they have just launched their lives. One has started medical school, one's a teacher, 2 builders, a small farmer working on food security issues, and one works for the federal government. And I owe it to them to do everything I can. They know this, I've told them, as long as I can to help back down global warming. And we really need to move past talking about future generations as a sort of a theoretical idea, future generations. The kids don't think of themselves that way, from what I hear. It's personal, and it's now, and it's their lives. So I urge you to do everything possible when looking at proposals and policy, and look at it through this lens, to reduce emissions and build resilience, and support a climate emergency resolution here in our valley. The stabilization of the climate is the single most important work of preservation for what we treasure here in the valley. And preventing the greatest threat to it that you yourselves, or our generation, her generation, has ever taken on or ever will. So I know we can do it. We have the answers. We know what to do. It's not too late. That's the good news. And we in the community and Napa Climate Now volunteers will lead with you. And
Thank you.
that's a promise.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.
Is it Kennedy? I want you to know that Kennedy was taken back there. My husband is on the working on climate action, so he's going to have some things to talk to you about. Yeah. And I give great credit to these young people who are stepping up for this cause.
Tell us when to start the clock. I'm just teasing you.
Yes. Anyway, this is kind of adjunct to this. We raised a lot of money in the city to send vehicles and RVs up to folks who had lost their homes and cars in the Butte County fires. And I really just came to say thank you to all of you for the city's contribution. It pushed us on to being able to buy yet another vehicle, which we haven't done yet, but we will. And also I wanted to give credit to the Federated Women of the Upper Napa Valley, without whom we couldn't have done it without them. They gave us the use of their 501c3 and have done a lot of the legwork for us. So really, I just wanted to say thank you, but she took my breath away. So
How many vehicles have you been able to?
we have 3 cars. Well, we have a pickup truck, we have a Honda Odyssey, and we have a Ford Explorer. We have a motorhome, 30-foot motorhome. We have a fifth wheel that sleeps 8, and a beautiful trailer that sleeps 6.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
The community.
Hi, my name's Julie Spencer. I'm the Executive Director of Rianda House, and I've come to say thank you. So first and foremost, I wanted to say Rianda House applauds Mayor Ellsworth and the council members for creating a new grant application process, one that's more rigorous and that ties directly to the appeals and your mission statement, and it created a way to offer 2 separate and yet equally important categories. By expanding your funding, you clearly illustrated your commitment to strengthen the city's importance for the organizations that provide ongoing services and programs that are often in most cities, and then also leaving room for the really special, heartfelt programs that make the city unique. So I'd like to say on behalf of our board, our staff, 65 volunteers, and hundreds of St. Helena residents that participate and enjoy the programs at Rianda House, we're really grateful for your grant support for the upcoming fiscal year. We're really thrilled to the depth in which that you've decided to support Rianda House, that Valley Family Center, and the Boys and Girls Club, as well as all the other fabulous programs and projects that you funded. So thank you very much. I also would like to invite each and every one of you to come out and celebrate with us on April the 28th. Many of you already know about the Rally for Rianda community. You're very welcome to. You know, young individuals with amazing visions become older adults, and we get to celebrate big, full lives as well. So please come and join us as we do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
My name is Esther Ackersloot, and thank you, Mayor Ellsworth, and thank you, Council. It's been a pleasure to be here again with you. So I am very concerned always about the safety of our residents, and so I speak about the safety today. So I'm concerned about the smart meters that are going into our buildings and are causing problems for our people. And I just wanted to mention that this is something that has caused some harm for some of us. And There has been a lot of research done one way and the other. And the money people, of course, they claim that they are all safe, which, of course, the electromagnetic field is emitting very harmful rays. And so this is not very safe. There are many stories on the internet of the number of people who have been harmed, if you just dig into it. I personally had a minor stroke. I have a chair that I have near an outlet, and my doctor told me to get something that will make me lift my legs because I have swollen ankles. So I got a recliner. And I sit near this outlet with my recliner and just relax there. Anyway, what has happened is that a few days before I had the stroke, I heard these little taps, like a ticking of a clock. You know how a clock ticks, it just goes tap, tap. And I thought that was very strange. I'd never heard that before. And I know about tinnitus, of course, if that's how you pronounce it. I always have trouble with that one. But anyway, I was watching a video about the smart meters and how they behave and so on, and I discovered that when they make a surge, they make this little tap sound, and that's what I had heard. And so I decided that, this is something that I have not been sitting in my chair for quite a while now because I'm afraid to get near that outlet. And so it affected my right hand, which is kind of disastrous for me. I'm very right-handed. Anyway, I just was told by my doctor to just get myself, when I called, to call 911 and get myself to the hospital, which I did. I was there for a couple days and nights. They did a lot of tests, and everything was normal, except they did an MRI, and that showed the stroke. Anyway, enough of that. But I'm feeling much better. I'm fine, basically. I am not going to be one winding up in a wheelchair. I intend to keep going as long as I can. Anyway, I encourage people to check on the internet. I have found some literature and so on. I found this one, 5 quick ways to reduce EMF exposure and boost your vitality. And this is a young man, Josh Del Sol Bollet. He has a creator of Take Back Your Power, it's called. Anyway, I have talked to a few people in our place, and some of them have had real harm done to them from this exposure. But is that the end of the story?
Yes, but my thought is perhaps you could email some information to me or the staff, and we can figure out a way to disseminate some of this information to the community.
We hope that maybe they could be changed back to the regular analog that we had,
So,
rather than emitting this dangerous.
yeah, so please do send me an email. You know my email.
I do.
Yeah, send me an email. We'll move it forward.
Okay, my dear. Well, I wanted to just mention one thing here, if I could. May I have an extension?
Well, we have a 4-minute limit.
Well, I just wanted to mention.
Could you email it to me, and then we'll make sure it gets out? I'll promise you that.
Oh, I can't take another minute.
No, we've hit the.
Sorry
the
about
limit.
that.
But
Oh,
please
well.
email me, and I will make sure we.
I'll send you some
Okay.
stuff, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. It's been great talking with you all and seeing you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment, please?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you've already started my time. Man, I'm Anthony McKelly. Yeah, I know. I've lived in St. Helena all my life. I'm 68 years old. A couple more years, my family has been here 100 years. So we do know St. Helena. This is the Adams Street property, and it prompted me to do this because the city is still in the mode of selling part of it for a hotel. The building that is next to the library's up in the upper left-hand corner. Those are two buildings for the Historical Society. One is their main office at 7,000 feet on the floor, 7,000 feet on the upper floor. The outside is an area to display artifacts, plus they can expand. The corner on Adams Street is an existing oak orchard, and all that needs to be done, and I'd be glad to volunteer this with my friends, to weed eat it, as long as the city will provide 4 picnic tables to put it there. We will take care of that for the city. Next to it on the right is a bathroom facility, same size as the one on Money Way, but Tom Faraday has helped me do this, and the two of us could probably design that bathroom for about $150,000 for the city, not $300 like the one on Money Way. The other item there is an amphitheater, and we're envisioning that to be an earth-filled area, and the bleachers are cut into the dirt, so on the backside, when you face it from Adams, it will be a knoll with drought-resistant plants on it and easy maintenance, and it will also have a cover over it, so that hopefully the library can use that for outside events, because right now all their functions are on the north side of the library in a parking lot that is not good for events. But they could use that. We have the vintners across the road who could probably throw events there. They do 2 events a year, the Napa Valley Premiere and the Valley Auction. And maybe that all the guests can't afford a $4,000 or $5,000 ticket. They could maybe throw an event there for the rest of the auction people and the citizens of St. Helena. Next to that is our parking lot. The parking lot that the city is trying to buy at the PG&E substation and of Mitchell's, I think, is a pipe dream. There are too many hotels that want to build hotels there, and the city is not going to be able to compete with them. I'm proposing the city put their parking lot there. There's 64 spaces, and every 5 cars has to have a tree. So that's why the trees are in there. But that could double for the farmers market. Move it back to town so everybody is in town. On Adams Street, it's wide enough to do parking on one side diagonally like Calistoga. You can get more parking there. The city, I know, wants to increase Lyman Park, spend a bunch of money next year. I'd say forget it. Put your money over here where it's quiet. In the evening, it's beautiful over here. And also in the evening, the Bank of America, the Chinchero building, nobody uses those parking lots. You have unlimited parking here. Plus all the people, and I didn't show it, there is a path that goes from the corner of Adams all the way to the river. It goes down to the Vineyard Valley, goes across, and you can get to the park at the college. And eventually, maybe that trail could go all the way down to Mills Lane, DeNatale, and all the way down there, and have another trail going north all the way to Deer Park. And I think the city, with the funds they have, they could fund that parking lot, they could build that bathroom, but just let the Historical Society and the people that want an amphitheater have a place to go raise money. We're not asking the city for any money. We'll raise the money, build those facilities, and I want to leave all the vineyard. I want to take up just enough vineyard to put the structures in. The old vineyard stays, and that is the landscaping. Just think about it. Guests come to the valley. Give me 2 seconds. Yeah. The guests come to the valley. They can park there. They'll be in an old vineyard. They can come up, use that park on the corner. The Historical Society with all their artifacts are there. They can come into town, shop, maybe go back, have lunch there. No other town in the county has this. We always wanted to be unique. This is our opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Cecilia Raffo. I'm a resident of St. Helena, and basically I'm here to support Anthony McKelly's vision. I do work at the library, but I am also a resident, and a lot of thought has gone into this idea for that bit of land, and certainly the library would like more space to do our outdoor events, but patrons and the just people who come to the city, I think would really benefit from something like this. So I just wanted to give my support.
Thank you.
My name is Sue Clark. I grew up in St. Helena. In 2011, I moved back and joined the Historical Society, and I've recently become their president. So this is a new thing for me to do. I am here to support Anthony McKelly and his idea. It's long past due that we have places for our local people, our residents. The Historical Society has things that are in my backyard, in my closets, and we all have things that we're storing that really need to be shown to people. They're unique, they're wonderful. They show how special this community is and was, and we'd just like you to encourage you to fully consider Anthony's idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more public comment? Seeing none. Now, I let things get away from me a little bit with Kennedy speaking, but it's a good practice in public comment or in the public city council meetings not to applaud because it sort of can sway the meeting. So I let things get away from us there, but just in the future, if we all keep that in mind. Thank you. The public comment is very much appreciated. So we're going to move now to reports by staff and city council, future agenda items, and AB 1234 reports. I'm going to begin with our city attorney, Tom Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It would be appropriate at this point to announce that the city council did meet in closed session this afternoon to discuss those 3 items designated on the agenda for that meeting. The council took no reportable action.
Thank you. Our city manager, Mr. Prestwich.
Thank you, Mayor. A few items. We conducted a nice workshop on March 22nd downtown and received a lot of great feedback on our streetscape concepts. And so that was really the initial round of public engagement. We mentioned at the time that we would present an online survey for those that were unable to attend. To date, we've received over 170 different responses via that online survey. It's going to run through the 14th, so just a few more days. It's available on our city website. If you click on the community news in the middle, about 2 down, if you click the bottom there, I think Cindy's working the bottom there. The survey's on there, and if I go on too long, you can take the survey before I finish from your phones. Secondly, the staff has been participating in a collaborative effort with the county and the other cities. It's referred to as a multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. This is a 2019 update. The third of third meetings is this week, and essentially what this plan will do is allow us to be competitive and compete for potential hazard mitigation funding down the road. And we know that we have a number of needs and we think opportunities down the road, and we wanted to be a part of that process. All of the agencies are participating together, so you'll hear more about that in the near term. On Friday, May 3rd, that's, I believe, the first farmers market. We're going to bring forward the next round of streetscape engagement, and we're going to have 2 spaces at the farmers market to encourage the community to provide some additional feedback. So the Gates and Associates has gone back. They're receiving feedback now. They'll go back and bring us some initial concepts, and they're going to be looking for the community's feedback on those. And so we want to encourage people to participate in that, and we thought the farmers market would be a great location to go to the community as opposed to ask the community to come to City Hall. And then finally, on Wednesday, April 24th, we are planning a workshop on the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District concept. So we anticipate having some high-level data to share with you. This is Wednesday, April 24th at 6 p.m. at the fire station. More on that on the website soon.
Very good. Thank you. Our finance director, Ms. Mitz.
Thank you. I just wanted to make the council and also the public aware that on Thursday, May 9th, from 9 a.m. to noon is our budget workshop at the firehouse.
Thank you. Our city clerk, Ms. Shafopoulos.
Well, we have some exciting news in the city clerk's department. So on behalf of Cami Garcia and myself, we're really excited that we're rolling out some more records to share with the community. So part of the scanning project is to provide building permits and things like that. So I just wanted to show you on our website right now, if you go to the city department's city clerk, and we now have an option for city record search. So right now, if you're curious about city agreements, contracts, building permits, city council minutes, ordinances, and resolutions, what we're doing is we're uploading lots of content. And we are kind of adding daily, so you can kind of check back. But for instance, let's just go to building permits. And they are in alphabetical order by the street. And so you can pick a street, pick an address. You can view the building permit. If you can't find what you're looking for, of course you can go back and you could submit if you go back to City Clerk's Department, if you have trouble finding what you're looking for, you can still submit a public records request and we can help you and assist you with finding whatever it is that you're looking for. So again, we're excited. Have a look.
Thank you. Building efficiencies, that's wonderful. Do we have any reports from the library? No. Parks and Rec?
Parks and Recreation is very busy. We have lots of classes happening over in the Redwood Room for kids and adults. We've got youth martial arts, mixed classes for adults and kids for martial arts, boxing for women and men happening on Tuesday mornings and Tuesday and Thursday evenings. And we've also got teen self-defense. I just came back from seeing that. We had about 17 kids in there having fun doing teen self-defense. So a lot of things are happening in the Redwood Room. Starting on the 28th of this month, the 2019 bocce season gets underway. So expect about 1,100 players out there at Crane Park, 6 days a week playing in 7 different leagues. And I have it on good authority that the weather is going to continue like this through the rest of the spring, and we need people to get out into their parks and be active and play and have some fun out there. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm seeing a tremendous amount of representation from our police department. Is there a Okay, very good. Is there somebody from the fire department? Is there a report from the fire department? Not seeing any. Okay, so we'll now move to Mr. Hausch, our planning director.
Thank you, Mayor Ellsworth. Just wanted to remind everyone that 1 week from today, the Planning Commission will be reviewing and recommending to the City Council the general plan and final EIR. So that is April 16th right here in this room. Meeting starts at 6 p.m., just a reminder. And we are tentatively looking at bringing that recommendation forward to the City Council on May 14th. Just a reminder for everybody to have that on their calendars if that's something they want to come be a part of.
Very good. Thank you for your work on that. Our Public Works Director, Ms. Smithies.
Thank you, Mayor Ellsworth. I just want to let everyone know that on Earth Day is happening for the city of St. Helena. The Chamber organizes the event, and it's at Lyman Park on April 20th. We'll have the electrical waste, batteries, and documents for shredding as it's a drive-through on Lyman and into the City Hall parking lot, Fire Department parking lot. Pharmaceuticals will also be collected at the St. Louis Police Department. And I believe the Chamber has some other activities maybe actually in Lyman Park, but I haven't been updated on what's happening. It'll be happening from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., and I believe St. Helena football team will be helping out, volunteering, as well as public works staff providing water conservation information for those. And then I also found out that the Silverado Trail slide repair at Pratt Avenue is advertised for bids, and the bids close on April 25th. So it'll be interesting to find out what contractors they get on board. So more to come.
Thank you. Councilperson Knudsen?
The only update I have
was that I participated. You're the council representative on the Active Transportation and Sustainability Committee, but I participated in this last meeting to discuss walking trails and accessible open space, and there should be some further action items from the Active Transportation Committee as well as the Parks and Rec Committee along those lines. Thanks.
Very good, thank you. Councilperson Shutel? No. Ms. Goberstein?
I just had a follow-up question for Erica. I had a question today about whether somebody from the county could come and kind of show us the plan for what's going to happen at Pratt when the bridge is reopened. And I think it was 2 or 3 months ago that Steve was here. And when you think it's appropriate to bring him back, people are curious to know if the geometry is changing of that. I don't want to call it a full intersection, but I've been getting some questions about it.
I can definitely ask him to come up again.
Okay. I spent the last week or so at a couple of emergency meetings of the Upper Valley Joint Planning Agency related to the Clover Flat landfill and things that have been happening there. While we have a contract with the landfill, and that's where our garbage that's not recycled goes, the direct authority for enforcement up there really lies with an agency of the county. And so we are involved and informed about what's going on, and I think at this point very confident in the county's oversee of what's happening there. We were able to keep the landfill open for garbage disposal of the communities that are served by UVDS. At the moment, it has been closed to the public, but that could change daily. So hopefully it'll be handled quickly.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Doring?
I don't have anything other than to wish my wife a very happy birthday today and to remind her not to cut into the cake until I get home.
We'll try to get you home at a decent hour. I've got a few dates I want to mention. We're going to be doing some meetings to prepare for the next emergency. This is a bilingual flyer that we prepared. We're going to do a meeting this Saturday at the firehouse from 10 to noon. And this is about helping our community understand what we can do to participate in being better prepared for an emergency. We're going to have a report today from Mr. Van Gorder from PG&E. One of the things he helped us understand was the more prepared we are as a community with such things as emergency backpacks, go bags, and go lists, then we are participating in the overall community readiness, learning about how our fire and our police work together during emergencies. That's what these meetings will be for. So the first one is this Saturday, April 13th, 10 a.m. to 12 noon at the firehouse, and the second one will be on Tuesday, May 21st. That's an evening from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And we have some flyers, and I might ask the city clerk if she would put them on the back desk. And please take one as you go, and this will be an opportunity, and we're hoping this will be a yearly. We'll get this in a rotation so we all better understand how to be prepared. The emergency backpacks are something that can be ordered online through Red Cross or Amazon. I'm hoping that we as a city can maybe find a way to help finance or subsidize these backpacks for our community. It's emergency food and water for 3 days, so that our first responders know that the community is at least got the basic supplies to get through an emergency. And we'll hear more from PG&E in just a little bit. The next date I'm going to mention is May 4th. We're going to do a spring cleaning day, and this was an idea that came from, I first heard from our interim police chief, Tim Foley, who had worked with our city manager, Mark Prestwich, in Nevada City. They created a day where community organizations, schools, citizens all volunteered together to do small projects, cleaning parks, weeding, raking, painting fire hydrants, painting curbs. So over the next few weeks, we're going to be identifying projects and organizing volunteer groups, and so anybody that wants to volunteer can contact the city, contact me, and we'll be doing outreach as well. And May 4th, it'll go from 10 a.m. to noon, 2 hours. But I think as a community, if we all pull together, we can do some extraordinary things. And I'm going to just say one other thing, because we're going to have some proclamations, and this will be my opportunity to say something. We're going to have a proclamation about Arts in April. That's a countywide celebration. We'll hear just a little bit more in a bit about the arts. And I want to say something because I'm an artist. I'm a professional artist. I've been for about 25 years as a freelance artist. And I have one comment I want to make as we talk about the arts, and for helping people to understand that art is not just about the final product that we all see. It's about the process as well. And so for us to truly foster the arts, we need to consider things like studio time, rehearsal space. There is a magic to art, but generally it doesn't come out of thin air. It's the product of countless hours of practice, rehearsal, study, and it's the behind-the-scenes aspect that we must embrace if we are to truly foster and empower our local arts and local artists. So that was just my opportunity to speak on that. There will be a proclamation, but if, as we work together as a community, remembering that artists do need that behind-the-scenes support to produce the magic that they produce. So with that, I will now move to our, are we into the proclamations now? We're at presentations and public recognition, so we will move into that. I'm still not sure when the police... For the volunteers. Okay, very good. Okay, I'm going to come over. We have 4 proclamations, and we're going to start with National Library Week with the library representatives. Come up, please. Excuse me. I'm dealing with a seasonal allergy, so please excuse my voice. So this is the City of St. Helena Proclamation, National Library Week 2019. Whereas today's libraries are not just about books, but what they do for and with people. Whereas libraries of all types are at the heart of cities, towns, schools, and campuses. Whereas libraries and librarians empower their communities to make informed decisions by providing free access to information. Whereas libraries are a resource for all members of the community, regardless of race, ethnicity, creed, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or socioeconomic status, by offering services and educational resources that transform lives and strengthen communities. Whereas libraries, librarians, library workers, and supporters across America are celebrating National Library Week, I, Jeff Ellsworth, Mayor of the City of St. Helena, proclaim April 7th to 13th, 2019, National Library Week. I encourage all residents to visit the library this week to explore or rediscover what's available at your library and with your library card. Because of you and through your support, libraries not only transform, but also equal strong communities. Thank you very much. In this part, we can applaud. Would you like to say a few words?
I just would like to thank the city and Friends and Foundation who support the library, and of course all of our patrons who come to the library and support us. Because of this support, along with providing free access to technology, ideas, and information, we are able to encourage creativity, provide opportunities for community engagement, serve as a source of empowerment, and promote equality. And library staff would like to thank City Council again for making us fine free. We've been enjoying telling people that all the last 2 weeks. Libraries have become people places, evolving from mere repositories for books and other materials into community gathering spaces and information centers, which offer everything from bilingual stories, poetry workshops, art classes, artist receptions, tax help, music concerts, history lectures, wildlife presentations, and much, much more. The library is excited to be offering brunch at the library to the children of our community with the help of the St. Helena Unified School District during the coming summer school session, which I found out today is almost 2 months. So we're really excited about that. However, before then, there will be a Dia de los Niños concert and a salsa tasting concert coming up in May and the end of April. And along with many other programs that are coming forward. None of these events or any of the 600 programs that have happened since last April would be possible without the amazing staff at the library. This group has welcomed 98,000 visits during the same time and sent over 138,000 items home with people. Library staff deserves to be praised, especially since today is National Library Workers' Day. Unfortunately, only 2 of my staff could come today because the rest of them are working or on vacation. So anyway, I am honored to work with this amazing group of women who are hardworking, dedicated, creative, and enthusiastic about what the library can do for their community. I hope you will join me in thanking them. Today I have Cecilia Raffo and Casey McConnell, but also on staff is Lynn Albrecht, Kitty Collins, Marilyn Coy, Kim Farmer, Connie Green, Janice Humphreys, Clara Ibarra, Kate McBride, Mariah McGuire, and Leslie Stanton. Everyone knows Leslie. From 4 to 40 hours a week, they make the St. Helena Library the wonderful and unique place it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next proclamation is for National Volunteer Week, where we have the Rianda House, the St. Helena Police Department, and the library. Maybe a representative from each group could come up and thank you. Not sure I got the right one here. City of St. Helena Proclamation. National Volunteer Week 2019. Whereas the entire community can inspire, equip, and mobilize people to take action that changes the world. And whereas individuals and communities are at the center of social change, discovering their power to make a difference. And whereas experience teaches us that government by itself cannot solve all of our nation's social problems, and whereas volunteers are vital to our future as a caring and productive nation, I, Jeff Ellsworth, Mayor of St. Helena, do hereby proclaim April 7th to 13th, 2019 National Volunteer Week. I encourage my fellow citizens to volunteer in their respective communities. By volunteering and recognizing those who serve, we can come together to make a difference. And I'd like to present this proclamation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Would you like to say a few words?
I would, if
yes,
you don't
please.
mind. Thank you, Mayor Ellsworth, Vice Mayor Doring, and City Council members. Several years ago, the country was in a divide over police and community. And they came up with a concept that we need to get back to community-oriented policing. The St. Helena Police Department has done a really good job with that. We have officers visiting with the schools now. We have officers participating in the Harvest Festival, so on and so forth. I don't want to steal this man's thunder away, but Officer Steve Peterson came up with this idea all on his own of putting together a volunteer and policing program. That program he put together from scratch, and it got up and running in 2017. The job that we do, we cannot do it without the community. It takes the police department and the community to make a safe place, not just one or just the other. With that, Officer Peterson brought in volunteers who have given us a lot of time and have really built that bridge between the police department and the community. This time, Steve.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. As Lieutenant Hartley stated, in August of 2017, the St. Helena Police Department held its first Volunteer and Police Services Academy. We call them the VIPs. The program started with 6 volunteers, and they were Perry Butler, Rick Broyles, Mike Burns, Ken Dowswell, Sarah Scott, and George Watson. George, can you please stand? All these 6 individuals in the first 5 months of the program had already volunteered 418 hours. And in 2018, we lost 3 volunteers to other commitments. However, we gained a new volunteer in Excel Jimenez. If you could please stand. During this year of 2018, these 4 individuals volunteered over 600 hours. Then in the beginning of 2019, the program lost 2 more volunteers to other commitments. However, starting on May 3rd of this year, the VIPS program will welcome 5 new volunteers. Christopher Bierman, Alan Solano, Linda and her husband David, and Christian Jimenez. So since August of 2017, the volunteers have donated over 1,200 hours to the police department in various roles. From really the first year, 2017 in October, we had the big firestorm, and many of them came and patrolled on both day and night and checked on vacant homes. We had volunteers going up to the children's ward at the St. Helena Hospital to pass out teddy bears. You'd see them down on Main Street during the hot summer passing out water bottles. Some are volunteers from last year's Butte County Fire in collaboration with all Napa County law enforcement, gathered uniforms, police gear, cards for officers in both Butte County and the city of Paradise that pretty much lost everything. So again, like Lieutenant Hartley said, bridging the gap between our department and the community, I thought was a very vital thing, because as you know, none of us live here in the community, and that is a really big detachment. You know, we're here 12 hours a day, whether like Miss Marciano back there, who's a dispatcher who you talk to on the phone, she's in the office for 12 hours where we get the freedom of going out and seeing everybody, but the community members really give us an insight to what we don't maybe see or hear about all the time. So thank you on behalf of the department for your support as a city council as well as the city. Thank you.
Hello again. I'm Julie Spencer still. But I'd like to introduce, I've got a fabulous team, and this is Elizabeth Cobb-Bruno. She's our program manager and our volunteer coordinator, manager extraordinaire. And Rianda House runs on volunteer fuel. Always has, always will. For 11 years, we've been able to do what we do because of the volunteers. But Elizabeth can tell you a little bit specifically about some of our volunteer teams.
Thank you, Julie. Hello, everybody. Volunteers are to my heart. We can't do anything at Rianda House without them, and with the community and the people that keep coming back. We have some volunteers that have been from the very beginning when Julie first started. They're still there on Thursday, 2 shifts. We have people that help us with special events. Our board is all volunteers. We have the greeters, special events. We have our winemakers group. We have a garden crew. We have calendar crew. The calendar you see, the 3rd Saturday of every month, they're there folding for at least 2.5 hours and stuffing envelopes the old-fashioned way. Can't do it without them. Program committee people. I can't do the activities without their help and their input. Library too. Yes, they are. And the last thing I want to say is we need to pass this on to generation. Volunteering is probably the most rewarding thing that I ever did as a kid and as I'm doing as a profession. And I hope we carry that on. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, do you want to?
I can thank all the volunteers that come to the library. We get all from the very young to the very old. The library doesn't discriminate against anyone, and we had over 700 hours of volunteer time on our books. So,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay, and now we're going to have a proclamation on Arts Month with Arts Council, Napa Valley President Chris DeNatale, and Adam. Hi. Nice to meet you. Oh, and Jeff Hansen. This is the City of St. Helena Proclamation, April 2019 Arts Month. Whereas the arts and culture embody much of the accumulated wisdom, intellect, and imagination of humankind, whereas hundreds of residents from each town and city came together in the creation of the County of Napa's adopted community cultural plan, which has been in place since 2008, and endorsed the following cultural core values for all of Napa County. Self-expression is everyone's birthright. The arts serve as a common language. The arts are critical to a healthy economy. The arts allow us to access our past, to ourselves, and to each other. The arts allow us access to our past, to ourselves, and to each other. And the arts give us a sense of place and of home. I, Jeff Ellsworth, Mayor of St. Helena, do hereby proclaim April as Arts Month in the city of St. Helena and call upon our citizens to celebrate and promote arts and culture in our city and to specifically encourage the greater participation by those said citizens in taking action for arts and culture in their towns and cities. Thank you very much. Here's the proclamation, and please say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I did want to introduce myself. My name is Chris DeNatale. I am the new CEO of Arts Council Napa Valley. I look forward to continue to work with the City of St. Helena on the arts. I want to recognize my board member, Jeff Hansen, who's here tonight, and then introduce another board member, Adam Weidman, who's an artist and also a St. Helena resident, to tell you a little bit more about our organization.
Good evening. My name is Adam Weidman. I live here in St. Helena. I am a professional, living, breathing, real artist. I've got two daughters here, so I've got a stake in things in the schools, one in primary and one in elementary. And in this last year, I was invited to join the Arts Council Board of Directors, and I said yes, because I believe the arts in a community is quite a reflection of the strength of that community. So over the past few years, the Board of Directors has been putting together a 3-year strategic plan. And when we brought Chris in this year, we're finally executing and rolling that out. Some things that we've brought in on that is to make things kind of open to all, a certain equity and everything. So there's no membership fees now. Arts in April is free, so on and so forth. So we would love for you to come out, enjoy, so on and so forth. I hope some of you caught the Engage Art Fair up in Calistoga this weekend. I think I'm going to hand it over to Jeff if he wants to say anything.
Okay. I don't really have a whole lot to add. I do want to encourage everyone to look up the Arts in April events. There's some really interesting things going on. And make a note to attend a few and support your local arts community. I think that is an extremely important thing to do because it enriches the entire community. And one thing that you may not know is the Arts Council has placed a major emphasis on education and the arts and working through the schools for the next generation. And I think you need to do what you can to support these young folks as well who are doing their part to make this a better community. Thanks.
Thank you. We have another proclamation on domestic violence, Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So is Shea Hunter here? Oh, okay. So this is the City of St. Helena Proclamation, Sexual Assault Awareness Month, April 2019. The month of April 2019 is Sexual Assault Awareness Month in California and throughout the United States. This year's campaign is dedicated to raise public awareness about sexual violence and educate communities on how to prevent it. The campaign theme, I Ask, requires many voices and roles to relate the message of understanding and respecting consent. Asking for consent is a healthy, normal, and necessary part of everyday life. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that I, Jeff Ellsworth, Mayor of the City of St. Helena, on behalf of the St. Helena City Council, do hereby proclaim April 2019 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in St. Helena, and I commend this observance to all citizens. Thank you.
I just wanted to thank
everybody here who's been supporting of us. And I just want to say that we have lots of events in April for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And if you could please take a time and look at our website, it's www.napanews.org, and you can see that we're going to be having a lot of events. One of them is tomorrow, Don Perico's restaurant in Napa. We are having a dine and donate, and it's giving us 20% of the benefits. So please come and join us there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, let's see. We're going to do the PG&E presentation. This is Mr. Van Gorder.
Good evening, Manager Prestwich and Mayor Ellsworth and council members. I'm not going to be watching March Madness. It's over here, but I am going to try and set my timer here to make sure that I'm not going on too long. And especially, I think I heard Councilmember Doring said that there's birthday cake and your wife's at home waiting for you. So far be it from me to stand between that. But I am here tonight on behalf of Pacific Gas and Electric, and probably more importantly on behalf of the project team, to talk about some upcoming transmission work, which we'll go through in just a second. But these are transmission wires. And if you guys maybe could just stand up briefly and just introduce yourself in your title or your role. Oh, yeah, okay.
Hi, I'm Marty Hunt. I'm the region manager for the North Coast region for transmission line.
Dave Thomas, Senior Planner, Environmental Management Group.
Les Hudson, I'm a transmission construction planner.
Brandon Pentain, Construction Manager, North Coast.
And these guys are the folks who plan this out. And then behind them are a large number of people who are working the project. The project is a replacement project. It's not new. It's not creating any new lines. It's replacing the towers and the wires that come from over the hill in Sonoma County over into St. Helena, and then eventually. And they'll know more about this. I'm not the electric specialist, but they then go from the substation here. I think it travels over to Silverado Trail, and then up Silverado Trail to the Calistoga substation, if I'm not mistaken. So to give you an idea of what this line serves, and it comes through an area that we want to make sure is well protected, and some of the work that we need to do that's connected to this particular project can't be done until this line is finished. So there's a little bit of urgency. We want to get this work done now and get done before the September, October, November months. So as you'll see there on the slide, it talks about currently we're reviewing all of our towers and poles in what we call Tier 3, Tier 2 high fire threat areas. And I told you there's some other work that needs to be done. This line is first. If you want to go to the next slide. So these are some of the circuits. The one that we're here talking about tonight is the Fulton Calistoga. There's 13 towers and poles I think that's just in the city limits area that we're talking about. They're near the Hudson, Madrona Ave, and Spring Mountain Road areas. We say late April through October. We'd hope to get started April 1st, but we're still having conversations with your city staff, with some private property owners, and getting communications out to customers. The two other projects here are also related, but we're talking about the Fulton Calistoga project at the top.
It says Calistoga. Does it mean to say St. Helena?
Well, that's good. Fair question. It's coming over to, we call it the Fulton. It's the Fulton to Calistoga. So that was the point of the substation. Yeah, I knew that question would come up.
Well, thanks for clarifying.
It's a fair question. If you want to go to the next slide, but yes, it's to St. Helena, and here this is. You're familiar with the line and probably how it travels down and comes over, and it's actually just practically across the highway from us. At least not, it's probably an easy walk to it. So these are the locations of the poles and the towers that are being replaced. Again, it's a full replacement. There's going to be, and again, we'll work with Erica and others as needed for encroachment permits and talking about where we may need to have laid down yards to stage equipment and whatnot. We are trying as best as we can to balance least impact to the neighborhoods, awareness of community events or things that are going on. Wine auction weekend is really high, if not at the very top of the chart. Over communicating with residents via this meeting here, outreach via automated phone calls, door hangers, trifold information that we're mailing, and I've put some of that information out on the back of the table, and I think some of it may have gotten around to council members. So we're just trying to over communicate about the project. There will be some impacts. If we could go to the next slide. This reiterates about the same thing that I was mentioning, but this is part of a comprehensive inspection of all of our towers and all of our distribution and transmission lines, especially in what the California Public Utilities Commission has mapped out as what we call high fire threat districts. So we evaluate, we inspect, and then as soon as we determine that there's work that needs to be done, we prioritize that work and we launch crews to go out and perform it. If you want to go to the next slide. This is talking a little bit about the 3 areas that we're going to be having work performed. I'll stop in just a minute because I'm sure you have questions. Some of the work involves helicopters where they're carrying the equipment, up the hill, and the guys can get into more detail about it. But it's impressive to watch and see them construct and build these things where the helicopters are bringing in pieces of equipment and it helps them get the job done a lot faster. This just talks about the various pieces. It's ground, it's from bottom up replacement. So we've had this infrastructure for many, many years. We're talking about infrastructure for the next, generation or two. Next slide. Again, community outreach. We have a community outreach coordinator who actually walks in neighborhoods that are directly impacted. So we will have a single point of contact. Again, making connections as best as possible for folks who may be second homeowners or aren't around that much. We'll do our best to communicate. But for neighbors who are there and living or and sleeping and trying to have their daily lives, we will have a single point of direct contact, as well as providing a number to Public Works, to the city manager, probably to the chief of police, Mr. Foley, or, in case there's an urgent need to reach us even after hours. If there's next slide. So this is a general number for folks to either go on our website and look at what we're doing related to wildfire safety. If you have wildfire safety questions specifically, that's for anyone in the community. We actually encourage those who have no involvement with this project whatsoever to visit that page, especially as we're coming up into the fire season. And if you have questions related to wildfire safety, that's what that's there for. If people have questions about their bill or lighting or smart meters, I heard questions about that. By the way, there is a way to not have a smart meter, and we can talk about that another time. I have a business card, but that is doable. But this is just for wildfire safety. We didn't put up for the entire public to have the phone number of this direct contact. Her name is Linda Clifton. She's on vacation now, and I'm sure she'll be refreshed and ready to hit the ground running when she comes back. but her direct cell phone number will be given to those residents. I think that's the last one. It is. Thank you.
So can I just mention it's wildfire safety at pge.com.
I think it's PG. If we can go back, it's pg.com pg.com/wildfire safety.
pge.com /wildfire safety. So
And
that's online where somebody can go.
That has a lot of information. One of the things that I really encourage people to check out there is updating your contact information. If there's a message that we have for folks at home, a lot of folks these days, the number of folks that registered for Napa County Nixle jumped 10 times or more after the 2017 fires. We want the same thing. We want to have connection with folks to let them know if and when the power may be going out. And I'm happy to come and talk. I've already talked with you, Mayor and City Manager, a little bit about our community wildfire safety program and the possibilities of a proactive public safety power shutoff in those really very windy days. If we're getting red flag alerts and the National Weather Service is saying we're going to have strong winds, very dry conditions, we can have another discussion. I'm happy to come and present on that. But a lot of that information is there at that wildfire safety website. And
Thank you.
If you have questions specific to this project, we're here. The team is here to answer any specifics that you have. At the same time, I don't want to delay the cake.
Are there any initial council comments?
I just have one question. Is there going to be some temporary helicopter pad in St. Helena that you will be using to do all this work, or how is that going to happen?
Do you want to talk to I think we don't have the specific location yet. We are trying to find, you correct me if I'm wrong, but we are trying to find a place that's suitable, that makes sense, that minimizes the impact. We haven't found that spot yet. But you may remember that there was some helicopter work last year. That was the Eagle, Eagle Rock. I get this. Okay, so we're hoping to use that same location for the flights.
For those who aren't aware, that's the area that's opposite of Harold Smith on Valley View. It's on the west side, next to Sulphur Creek. So they already have an area pad there. They did a lot of work last year.
But to be clear, there isn't any flight path that comes into or over the city limits that I recall. I mean, over homes in the city. If that's your question, for safety reasons, there's no. We're going going west away from the city, not any work over the city with the helicopter.
So these transmission poles on Madrona, you won't be using a helicopter there?
I think we'll be using a crane in those
Okay.
areas.
Thank you for that clarification.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a good clarification.
And there will be impacts to the meandering trail there, because where it goes, weaves in and out of the poles.
Yeah.
Madrona.
Yeah, I mean, we'll maintain ADA accessibility and comply with the rules and the regulations. The footing, if I'm not mistaken, gets expanded a little bit on some of those poles. It's the footing, the mounts.
It's a well-used path by runners, walkers, dog walkers. Yeah, so be some logistics, I guess, you'll work around.
Is there other initial council questions? I want to open it to the public.
I had some questions that citizens had asked me,
Yeah.
so I'm thrilled that you guys are here, and thanks for the communication ahead of time. So it sounds like for the Fulton-Calistoga work, it's replacing those towers, and I think the indication was that the new towers were going to be about 15 to 20 feet taller than the current towers. Is that correct?
I know they're taller. I don't know the exact dimension. Yeah. Do you?
I don't know the exact new height yet either.
Okay, so we don't know the
Don't know
exact,
the-
but I'm happy
okay.
to get the answer of the new height for you.
Okay, it's really sort of public record. And then I think the other thing, aside from the winding path, there is also trees that are sort of adjacent to the existing towers. Those towers are probably 30 or 40 years old, I imagine.
I think
older.
they are older than that.
Are they older? Well, they're reasonably tall, but I mean, presumably the vegetation would, in the process, would probably be destroyed and then replanted, or is that anticipated? Is there a plan around that is shareable with the public?
Do you guys know anything about vegetation work that needs to be done? I wasn't aware of any vegetation work that needed to be done, given the height.
Well, just in terms of if there's a different pad, or presumably it's a slightly different
possible
thing.
It's possible that if there's vegetation that needs to be removed, that they will have to do it. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Marty Hunt.
Yeah, great.
Yes, we would restore any vegetation. If things need to be moved or cut, we would leave it in good or better than it is today.
Right. And is the idea that sort of the existing tower is removed and then the new tower is put in the exact same location, or is it adjacent while...
Adjacent, usually, yeah.
Because presumably...
We call it
inline.
tangent, yeah.
Okay, got it. And is the idea that then power is continuing to occur on these existing lines during the process, or do you shut down the line, or just for the public? Maybe?
Absolutely. The line is currently de-energized.
Okay.
And so it will remain de-energized until the end of the project.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
And the upgrade to at least the Fulton-Calistoga, the 13 towers and the new circuit, you're still going to be delivering the same level of power through those lines, right? I think it's 60 kilovolts, is that?
60,000 kV.
60,000.
60,000 volts or 60 kV.
Okay, great. And then the Silverado, I know you're here mostly to talk about the Fulton-Calistoga, but the Silverado-Fulton Junction and the Eagle Rock-Fulton Silverado, that work is not replacing towers at all. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
It is repairs of the existing structures. So maybe, I don't know the exact, but the type of work is guy wires and insulator replacements, things like that too.
Okay, so sort of standard maintenance.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
And then the final question that people had asked me and that I really know nothing about is that now understand the Fulton-Calistoga line, is that a sort of through transmission, or does that then are there points of contact where that gets stepped down to actually deliver power to St. Helena?
Yeah, at the Silverado substation.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Energy that would come through that line could be used by you guys.
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome. The height is an estimate at this point. We're finalizing engineering. Some of the places in the canyons, we're trying to eliminate towers, and so we're raising them to cross canyons and valleys. So that's why you got a large range on the height. We don't, so that's why we can't exactly tell you what your heights are, but we're trying to comply with the most current standards, GO 95 compliance.
So given that that you don't actually, you're not putting the new tower exactly where the other one currently exists, I would encourage you, there's a tree at the corner of Hudson and Madrone that is it's sort of a special and very old tree.
All right.
And if that could somehow be protected, people would love that. It's a tree that gets, at Christmas time it gets ornaments, for Valentine's Day it gets Valentines, for... Not that one.
It's our holiday tree.
Can I make a suggestion? Can we maybe have a special meeting or something where we identify what we think is important to the community to present to you?
I think if we work with staff, that's okay.
Yeah.
Work with staff on those points.
Yeah, so that you can see where we're coming from and see what you can work with. Okay.
Yep, we would love the
Okay, so I want to open it to public comment. If there's any question, if you could come up to the podium.
While she's coming up, I think that tree is sometimes known as Mary Novak's tree. The tree that is decorated all the time. Has a lot of sentimental value.
And you can pull the microphone down a little bit there.
No, I haven't spoken publicly in quite a long time. Like a year or two, maybe 3, 4. Anyway, I'm Jenna LaFleur. I live here now for about a year and 9 months. And the last 9 months of those, I've known that I've been severely injured by the 6 smart meters going directly into my house about this far away. And although I've asked to have them replaced and taken out, And I've finally given up and still pay rent, but have moved out of my apartment because I can't afford any more damage. I have some brain damage here from laying on the bed by the wall, like most of us do, when the waves from the unsheathed wires, the electronic transmissions to PG&E are going down 190,000 times per day per smart meter. That's times 6 for me. Were actually radiating right into my head, and that includes radiation and microwaves and RF electricity, which is very dangerous, low frequency waves, which I don't know a lot about, but I know a lot about what they do, and I've experienced what they do. And I've just had an MRI to see what I hope will not be a devastating decision about what I've suffered from lying in this bed, not knowing that these leaking smart meters and the leaking wires, which are not properly sheathed, and PG&E, everyone I've talked to so far has admitted they all leak, and that all you can do about it is try to sheath them, which I avoided for a long time, and I finally got my owner to do that about a month ago, and that's made the waves vibrating in my house even worse. And I can only assume that encapsulating the waves around all the meters has pushed them down the wires more, and they're coming more out into my house, which is a disaster zone now for me. I've asked PG&E to take them out, and they haven't. I asked them to sheath them, and they refused. That I had to do it at $100 a piece. And of course, I can only sheath mine. If you pay PG&E electricity, you own the meter and you own the smart meter. And so you can take out the smart meter, which I did about 4 months ago on an opt-out, which is perfectly legal and easy to do. Other people where I live have not had a very easy time trying to opt out. And other people where I live are being injured as well. And some of them have sheathed their smart meters. And one person who has just 2 has found that it's much better now. But since I have 6, I had 5 when I moved in, and then they came and put a new one on the sprinkler system. The sprinklers would go off in the middle of the night. I would wake up with this thing like knives hitting in my head. Very painful. I've never experienced anything like it. Well, you know, I wanted to start this whole presentation telling you that I'm an artist too. I'm a glass artist, and I'm not doing it now because I'm injured, but I'm also a legal researcher. And after I started having these constant health issues ever since I moved in, that got extremely bad at the end of the first year, I called my friends in Marin. I said, I don't know what's wrong. I'm sick all the time. I have emergency rooms all the time. And my head hurts all the time now. And I'm still sick. And I'm never sick. And they said, well, it sounds like you have a smart meter. And so when my manager took me to see them, I did. I had 5 of them, all going into my house, not all the neighbors. I had the electricity burden for all my 3 quad unit people, both for electricity and water, and it was all coming in. So, I don't think this is what I came up here to say.
Well, let me suggest that this is the second person commenting on the smart meter issue, and so I can, if you follow up with me, you can email me or contact me directly. Are you at the same residence?
Yes.
Okay, so I will follow through up on that.
Okay.
And we will get this conversation pushed forward.
Okay, could I just say one more thing? I walked for an hour to try to find here. I thought you were at the other end, and I'm disabled, and I walked all around your whole high school looking for a red building.
Well, I'm glad you found us.
And that's why I was so late. I was on time. But
Thank you
I
for
was in the
being
wrong
here.
place.
And I will follow up. We will
Okay,
follow
and the
up.
only other thing I want to say about the slides, which is really what I came to say, aren't these towers 5G?
These are not, to my understanding. This is something completely different. This is not telecommunications. This is electrical power.
Okay.
But I will follow up with you.
Yeah, okay. The only other thing I'd like you to say that I don't know if y'all are aware of, it's very important to you, is I am electrosensitive now. I never was before. But if I'm downtown under these wires that are so high, I feel them They're leaking.
Okay.
They're leaking on everybody in San Helena
Okay.
all the time, 24/7.
So I will follow through with
And
you
it's
on
really
that
dangerous.
conversation.
Okay, thank you.
We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else from PG&E? I'm going to make one comment. I think from my meeting with Mr. Van Gorder, I think we're fortunate that his background has been as a council person in the city of Napa. I think that allows him to be sensitive to many of the community concerns. And so I think if we sort of put those together, create sort of a map and a plan of what we're looking at, I believe we're going to find responsiveness. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, we thank you for your time. We will continue working with staff, with the city manager. We'll listen, and you know, the whole team is here. We want to do it right and do it right by the city. We want to get it done, especially during this time of year. It's going to be tremendously helpful, you know, for the future. But if there's further questions or anything, if you want to direct them to staff, and we'll continue to collaborate. But we appreciate your time for the presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And once again, to the community, on this coming Saturday, April 13th, 10 a.m. to noon, we'll be talking about emergency preparedness, and this will come up in terms of the possible power shutdown. So we'll talk about it more on Saturday. Thank you. Okay. Staff briefings, seeing none. We'll move to consent items. Members of the council or the public may ask that any items be considered individually for purposes of considering alternative action, for extended discussion, or for public comment. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions. Is there any, I'm going to read 8.1, 8.2.
I have to abstain from, right, we have to abstain from voting on the minutes, the ones that we weren't there for.
Mr. Brown?
You're actually, excuse me, you're actually allowed to vote if you state that you've gone back and,
Okay. Thank
watched
you for
the
the
video of the meeting.
Oh. No.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, I did not do that.
Or if you were present.
Oh,
Or if you were present at the meeting.
yeah, I'm just going to abstain. I probably was, but yeah.
Okay, so,
The record should, which meeting was that you were abstaining on?
The first one.
8.
November 27th.
Yeah, November 27th, 2018.
I would need to abstain for the first two, the November 27th and the December 11th. The rest of those I was here.
Yes, you were.
So how do we manage this? They've got it. Okay, so 8.1, 8.2. Anybody want to pull something from the consent agenda? So I would invite a motion on the consent items.
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Vice Mayor Doring?
Yes.
Councilmember Koberstein?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Chateau?
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth?
Yes. We'll move on to public hearings. Seeing none, we will move on to old business. This is 10.1, updated attachment, review and comment on the LAFCO County Local Agency Formation Commission, LAFCO, draft sphere of influence SOI policy, prepared by Noah Hausch. And please.
Thank you, Mayor Ellsworth, members of the council. The item before you is a draft comment letter intending to comment on a draft policy proposed by the Local Agency Formation Commission, or LAFCO, for Napa County. There's some background in the staff report that talks about LAFCOs have been around since the 60s. They essentially manage the interaction between other jurisdictions, so cities and counties, and particularly the sphere of influence is an area that is oftentimes the area just outside of the city limits but located within the county boundary or the county jurisdiction. One interesting thing about a majority of the communities in Napa County is that the LAFCO sphere of influence is the same as the city limits. And so the letter tries to get at kind of the oddity of that, pointing to some of the definitions in the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Governmental Reorganization Act, which is the regulations that govern LAFCO, and how sphere of influences are actually defined specifically within that letter, or I'm sorry, within that law, as a plan for the probable physical boundaries and service area of a local agency. So there are numerous categories within the letter, but they generally try to comment on the intention or the benefits and frankly, appropriateness of acknowledging the existing services that the city provides to these areas outside the jurisdiction. There's comments specifically to the definitions that are included in the draft policy. And then there's kind of some comments encouraging LAFCO to look towards the future as some of the new housing mandates come down from the state and as some of these adjacent properties have issues with their current septic systems or well systems. It's often a mechanism by which those properties address those through connections to existing services. And along those lines, a map was provided at the dais and is available to the back. And this just shows all the properties that currently have water service outside the city limits of St. Helena. I believe there's over 300 parcels. And so I can... But so to summarize, the letter identifies various areas that the city has, our city staff has worked with council liaisons, Councilmember Koberstein and Mayor Ellsworth to provide some general feedback. So all the blue parcels here are parcels that are located outside the city limits that currently receive city water services. This dark line is the city limits. And then, as I said, all of these parcels are parcels that receive water services. But it's broken down into several sections trying to tie to the specific LAFCO policies, primarily with regards to some of the definitions that are chosen and their intention behind those definitions. It encourages LAFCO to consider city agricultural parcels of the same importance as county agricultural parcels. Look to the provision of services both currently and future in the creation of sphere of influence boundaries. There's some specific comments regarding how vacant land is considered and defined in a sphere of influence update. And then, again, looking towards the future to anticipate that there will be some issues that are located in these kind of transitional areas that have St. Helena addresses but are located within the county's jurisdiction as they craft their new policy. So with that, staff is here to answer any questions or take additional feedback and edits to the letter, and we will be providing this to LAFCO prior to their deadline, which is referenced in the staff report.
Thank you. Is there any initial county comment or council comment, Ms. Chateau or Mr. Knudsen?
Just for the community's sake, for public record, can you just quickly summarize the current LAFCO board that under whose jurisdiction it's 5 members? Is that correct?
Sure. So LAFCO is made up of 5 members. I think one of which is a Up Valley representative, so one of the 3 Up Valley cities. Another is another city representative, and I think it alternates between City of Napa and City of American Canyon. There's 2 members who are from the Board of Supervisors and 1 at-large member. So it's a 5-member board, and I'd ask Vice Mayor Doring to correct me if I made any mistakes on that.
Is there any comment from this? No? I will open it for public comment. I will close the public comment. Mr. Doring, Ms. Koberstein, any thoughts?
I think you did a great job of summarizing the concerns from the city of St. Helena. I would prefer not to use the word feel. It's not a word that really resonates with me. In the first paragraph, I see that occasionally in government documents. The city of St. Helena believes, I think it's a stronger word, better word. I had a question regarding the third paragraph under definitions. It's referring to the definitions and how that is, the definitions here on the local level in the county are somewhat different than the definitions used in the state code. And then there's a sentence here, it says, this inconsistency with the state definition has led to commercialization of agriculturally designated properties. And it goes on. I guess just from a logical reasoning, I'm not sure it's the inconsistency that's led to the commercialization. I would probably feel more comfortable with maybe an expanded sense or an expanded definition of agriculture in Napa County has led to commercialization. And I think the point I made offline is, and I maybe you can speak to this in more detail. I'm not sure what you're getting at here. I understand that there is an expanded sense of what a winery can do, for example, on a winery premises. I guess I'm trying to draw the distinction between how a piece of land is zoned or designated in the general plan. That may be the, it's entitled to certain things, but that to me seems different than agriculture per se. Agriculture and how a piece of property is zoned, in my mind, are different. And I guess my point is, and I'm not sure about this, that's why I'm asking, are we conflating those ideas in this letter? Maybe someone else could speak to that, because I don't feel comfortable with that paragraph until I understand what. It's under definitions.
Okay.
Second paragraph.
So I can respond, or I can wait for other council comment if there is any.
It's second paragraph, so B, paragraph B, under definition.
It's a second
I'm going
paragraph.
to talk about the letter.
Oh.
The letter itself, yeah.
I think what's being pointed out here is that the state definition seems somewhat more strict than the current county zoning and definition, in that it is, I would say, more purely agriculture in the state's view of what is agriculture. That's what's trying to be pointed out there.
And we were also trying to get to, the executive director of LAFCO identified that they had real concerns with including any parcel that was designated as agriculture within a city sphere of influence, for fear of that parcel being intensified and that agriculture being lost to development. We're trying to point out both that, and further in that meeting, they voice their intent to use the county's definition of agriculture in looking at how those parcels are decided to be included within a sphere of influence or not, with the intent of protecting the parcels that are regulated under the agricultural preserve, so the voter mandated preservation of ag. This letter is intending to point out both that under the county's definition, not all activities are actually agriculture per se, under other definitions such as the state or the cities. And also to also, I guess, highlight the city's or importance of agriculture to St. Helena. The city has had vineyards that are world renowned for over 100 years in some instances within our city limits. Over 40% of our land use area is actually designated as agriculture. That is a very unique thing for a city. And what staff and working with the council liaisons, what we don't want is for a sphere of influence expansion to be denied on a parcel that may be commercially developed or may just be a logical extension of a sphere of influence, or maybe even a future city boundary, because we have undeveloped parcels, undeveloped in quotation marks, because they're used for agriculture. So we're trying to highlight the importance of agriculture for St. Helena, while also encouraging LAFCO to not use such a strict hard line to say if it's zoned for ag, then it can't ever be included in a sphere of influence of a city.
I think Mr. Doring brings up an excellent point that we're looking at sort of two different things, agriculture and agricultural zoning, and what can occur in agricultural zoning. What, I've become quite familiar with this over the last number of years. In 2008, the county, in the general plan, changed their definition of the word agriculture as it relates to the agricultural zoning in Napa County, in the county. And so there is a bit of a confusion when we use the word agriculture about what is allowed. And so even if something is in agricultural zoning, if it's already commercially built, is it still agriculture? So I think that you've written an excellent letter, and I think delineated the concepts pretty well, in my opinion.
So, I think one of the challenges from a state perspective is that essentially they don't want ag assumed by a LAFCO organization to make the decision to put it into a city because it would be developed. But is our argument sort of twofold? One, we already have ag. We know how to protect ag inside our city. And that some of these ag uses that are potentially within our study areas are actually there's commercial activity on them, there are tourist activities, et cetera, and water usage is actually a significant part of that operation. So we're already providing services to these ag areas. Is that sort of...
That's absolutely right. So we're trying to make that argument, but it's also important to know, say if there was a parcel that had a failing septic system that was a couple properties away from our current city limits, and those other parcels happen to be designated for agricultural uses and in current ag. If the policy would not allow those to be in our sphere of influence, then we couldn't get to the parcel that was suffering the problem further down, or maybe that was a intensified commercial area, because you have to be they have to be contiguous, and it has to be a logical extension. And so it also is looking at other LAFCO policies that basically you can't have an island annexation, and that's not good land use. And so if there was a need to extend services or get a certain parcel into a sphere of influence for whatever reason, it has to continue and connect contiguous to the city boundary. And so that's also essentially, if we have a buffer of ag around the city and then there's parcels beyond that need assistance from the city, we couldn't get to those parcels if we were precluded to it from a policy that said a ag parcel cannot be included in a sphere of influence.
That's good clarification. Is there any other comment before the next step of this would be to submit it to the county?
To LAFCO.
To LAFCO, okay.
They're a state independent agency.
Okay. Is our council comfortable with that? Are we at that spot?
Yeah, I would just want to add, I think the reason we focused on the definitions and what's in the city of St. Helena is we often hear there's no point in expanding your sphere because you have unused vacant land inside your city, and it tends to be agricultural, and it should carry the same weight as agricultural outside of our city. And that's something that's been lost, I think, in the analysis, and I'm grateful we had an opportunity to comment on this and try to put some flesh on the bones of what the exceptions are and explain what the situation is here, really.
So I have a question. So if we do expand the sphere and we're doing water services, are we then also implying that we pay for sewer? And who pays for that? How does that work?
So an expansion of a sphere of influence in no way commits any services to being provided. According to the definition, it's both a logical future boundary and acknowledgement of current services. So we already provide water service to all these parcels that are highlighted. If currently we could not, per council policy, per city ordinance, we could not extend sewer services beyond our city limits. However, if there was a change to that policy or an exception that was made potentially to address a failing septic system or some type of a health hazard, the city would in no way pay for that. So I'm as a planner, I always say, developers often pay for infrastructure. Cities tend to maintain it. And so if there was a parcel that needed a sewer extension, it would be their responsibility to extend that sewer to connect themselves. We would then own that sewer connection that was newly constructed, and we would be responsible for maintaining it into the future, and that's what their rates would pay for.
Okay.
So are we comfortable with this letter and moving forward with it? Do we have consensus on that?
I just suggested two relatively minor changes. The third change would be just a typo. It says in the header, it has April 5th, should match April 9th. I'm comfortable with it. I think sometimes we use the term, and we need to come up with a better term than definition. I know you've used that term, and I'm not chastising. I think it's broader than that. It's not like, okay, you can find a definition on page 4, and here it is, the definition of agriculture. It doesn't work that way. There's like 10 different places you can look, and all taken together, I agree that there is an expanded connotation or notion of what agricultural is. It's not really I don't know what, there's a better word than definition. I can't come up with it right now, but that was the concern I was expressing. But I'm okay with the letter.
But I think you bring up a good concept that maybe we can consider for future use. But I think with this letter, yeah, I'm certainly comfortable with it. Do we have consensus from? Okay.
Can we just be advised when LAFCO is going to meet to review all these things?
Okay. Thank you very much. That was excellent work. And we will be moving on. 10.2 is not on. 10.3 is discussion and direction regarding 2019 work plan staffing and assignments. And this is prepared by Mr. Prestwich.
Thank you, Mayor. In advance of this meeting, I asked each of the council members to share with me individually any of the items that we had identified on the work plan that you previously saw on February 26th. In a few instances, we have identified a possible council liaison, and we found it helpful to have council members, either a single council member or a second council member, assist with various policy items. And so highlighted on this grid are areas where we thought council members may have an interest in assisting. And I've aggregated your votes with the exception of Councilmember Knudsen. And we have a few areas where 3 council members have expressed interest. There could be more, depending on your interests. And in those cases, we would need to remove one of the council members. In almost every other case, I think the only exception is on goal number 5. There's one item that's missing, and missing a potential council member that could be appointed. In fact, it's on goal 4, L and M. I'm sorry, goal 4M. So that's 1. So this has been prepared to facilitate your dialogue tonight. And it would probably be easiest to move consecutively through the goals, starting with goal A1.
I want to add that it's not intentional that I'm not listed anywhere. Mark and the city manager and I just did not get together through neither of our faults, actually. So,
well, as we move through them, maybe we can. Yeah, maybe.
I need to use the restroom right now. I'm kidding.
All right, so we'll start with Mark, do you want to lead this?
So this first one is assisting with the library, city hall, and conceptual rec facility. Councilmember Chateau was appointed last year by the council. Before she was a council member, she has been assisting with the development of the RFP and is scheduled to participate in interviews next week with the consultants that have proposed on the project. And Vice Mayor Doring and Councilmember Koberstein had assisted last year with this project.
So do we want to choose 2, decide on 2? Any thoughts from our 3?
No, I'll turn this over to Anna and Councilmember Koberstein. I thought it was a little confusing because there's 3 different projects going on here, and they kind of got conflated. They're a little separate. I could see some similarities, and that's why I was really thinking about the city hall and the, mostly city hall. So I'm sure I'll be able to put my 2 cents in another fashion. So I will allow that change.
Okay. The next one is related to the Pratt Main intersection. So we're studying that. It is planning to come back relatively soon. It may be helpful to talk with a couple of council members in advance before that report comes to the city council.
Could I just ask a question?
Sure.
Why is A actually under infrastructure? Is that because it came out of shape, or it just seems kind of odd there?
I think it's because of it's a civic building
Okay.
or city buildings.
Okay.
So goal 1B relates to the Pratt intersection. We're anticipating bringing that back relatively soon. We're getting close to finishing, and it would be helpful to sit down and talk with a couple of council members on that before it is brought to the full council.
I had jumped in on that, but if that's something that Mr. Knudsen feels that he would have an interest? No? Okay. Mr. Doring, are you?
I've shown interest, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. On 1E, this relates to engineering analysis related to water rate structures.
Excuse me, Mr. City Manager.
Yes.
Do you want participation on C and D? I was going to add my...
If you're interested in any that don't have a highlight, please let me know. I'm planning to skip over those unless you see an interest in one of those, and we can assign that to you as well.
Would it be appropriate to do this offline so that I don't use council time?
It's helpful for me in a public environment to capture it so that I can take a record and then try to get this back to you and the staff in a quick turnaround.
So I'm interested in the engineering stuff. Like the removal of the dam? Yeah, really interesting. And
Would you look at the integrated utility master plan?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I love that stuff.
Okay, I've added you to the C and D. And then E relates to the water rate structure.
And I think that I accidentally didn't jump in on E and G, and I had intended to, if that is okay with everybody.
And then on F, this relates to the downtown streetscape. Vice Mayor Doring and Councilmember Koberstein have been designated and have been working with staff very actively on this. There is on E and G, we have the mayor and the vice mayor. So this moves us to goal 2, unless there are any other items. And if you saw something after the fact, Councilmember Knudsen, you can let me know.
On G, even though I did not express interest, have I been appointed to that? Just want to.
Looks like it.
Looks like it. I'm happy to do it.
Okay. Thank you. On goal 2, stabilize, maintain, and improve access to housing. You did receive a public comment on this tonight. Received feedback from 2 council members on goal 2A and also goal 2D.
D, so that's myself and Mr. Chateau.
I'll volunteer for B and C if.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to have some connection on C, particularly, to have some coordination between what we think our council objectives are here and what the Planning Commission will be doing. So,
to me, I'm just looking at these, that there's going to be some intersection of all these ones. So how we structure this so we don't get into a Brown Act problem, I think it's important.
We limit our conversations and work only with 1 or 2.
So what happened there? David is on C
David expressed interest in 2B,
and C.
as in boy, and then I think I don't have a name for C.
He said both.
I'd be happy to do.
Both of those?
Yeah.
And on A and D, we would leave those as is. I have a cheat sheet that's a little different than yours. I'll share this with you tomorrow. I'm keeping good records. Are we ready to move to goal 3? Okay. On goal 3, 3B. Vice Mayor Doring, did I get this one correct? These are the design guidelines.
Depends on who I'm working with. Yeah, I volunteered for it.
Mary, do you have an interest in that?
Well, I did it last year, but I was trying to open up more opportunities for other people who, I mean, I'll do it if nobody else wants to, but.
Nobody else has, you're in.
Wait a minute.
I've got you marked in, see?
Going once, twice.
David?
I mean, I'm happy to participate. I thought they were excellent. You did the planning department and you all did a fantastic job last year. So, I don't need to participate in that because I thought the direction was excellent. But I'd be happy to help in the general plan if you need further help on that. Which is A.
Is there a value to having the consistency of your work from the past?
Not necessarily. No, I think it's better if we integrate
Okay.
the work a little bit more.
David?
I think if I can speak to 3A, that one is, we're anticipating bringing this to you by May 14th, so this one's almost finished. 3B is an area where you may have an interest, Councilmember Knudsen. This is
Sure.
one that still has a little bit of work to do.
Sure.
Okay. Then I don't have, I'm going to skip over C, D, and E, unless is there any interest there? These are primarily internal work that we'll be bringing forward relatively soon. And 3F, the mayor has indicated an interest in this one. This is assisting with enhancing our code enforcement program.
Is there anybody who would like to join me on that?
I will, if you want to.
All right, thank you.
That's a brave assignment.
Okay.
There's a small X under K. It didn't get enlarged, and that's Councilmember Chouteau. This relates to assisting with a regional dialogue. The mayor has been involved in this in the past.
Which one is this?
This is on K.
Okay.
This is 3K. So there have been some recent conversations that Councilmember Chouteau has been involved in and has expressed an interest in assisting with, and that effort may actually dovetail nicely with what was envisioned last year.
And I would just like to add, it's referenced in the letter to LAFCO, but we had a meeting with MTC staff recently, all planning directors, and they anticipate a complete rewrite of the RENA process and likely many jurisdictions having much higher assigned numbers, which is what we were trying to get to with some of the LAFCO policy comments. So I think that's critical, and it'll be very interesting.
And I'm learning a lot about that being on the ABAG, that committee where I'm going once a week to San Francisco. So I was interested because of the climate change and that work, but there's also the housing piece.
I think that's great. I think it's perfect for you with what the CASA, yeah, okay. And then I'm on the NVTA as the mayor. Mr. Dory's on that as well, but I'm happy to participate or to, I think I have plenty of other assignments, so maybe just you see how that goes. And
I didn't necessarily identify or highlight L, but L relates to the municipal services review, which LAFCO is involved in. There may be some I guess, some consistency to have those that are involved in assisting with this letter on the sphere to also be potentially involved in municipal service review.
I believe that will begin after LAFCO gets its policy up to date and we have our general plan in place.
So, Ms. Koberstein and I stay on that
Sure.
trail.
Looks like it's towards the end of the year.
That's one that probably spills over into 2020. It will take them some more time, and they're not anticipating starting anytime soon, later in the year. And then on P, this relates to pre-application conferences for planning applicants. And the Vice Mayor had, if I have this correct, the Vice Mayor had indicated an interest in assisting. Okay. Moving to goal 4, unless there are any other requests. We have, jumping to 3D, or I'm sorry, 4D, we have 3 members interested in that initiative. This relates to securing tenants for vacant buildings downtown, efforts to help with downtown. So this would be the mayor, the vice mayor, and Councilmember Chateau.
Happy to drop off.
Oh, you're quick on that one. Okay.
Okay. And then F, G, and H.
On F, so that seems consistent with DE. So if Ms. Chateau and I stay on there, and there seems some consistency working on those two, if that works with you.
I'd be happy to participate on B and C if you want to do on the endowments and gifts and city revenue option generation.
That would be great.
That would be terrific.
You're our option generator. Remember?
And then on G, on the EIFD work, this is Paul and Mary that have worked with the staff last year and continue to work with us on this emerging item. And then jumping to the next page, K, we have 3 council members interested in evaluating options for the Adam Street property. So that's the Vice Mayor, Councilmember Chateau, and Councilmember Koberstein.
I can drop off.
Okay. And then on L, this is the facade and tenant improvement program. This is an idea in the economic strategy. More work to be done there, and we're attempting to prioritize work.
And I can join in that discussion if we're talking about the other downtown things as well, if it's helpful.
Okay, and that would be also Councilmember Chateau. Okay.
Sure.
Councilmember Knudsen, item M there on 4M, that does have some financial linkages.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. And then jumping to goal 5 related to youth, a lot of enthusiasm here. So I'll turn it over to you on this one. So we have A, which relates to some work on identifying resources.
I get a lot of youth in my life, so I'm happy to drop off of any of these.
I would like to stay engaged in the work on the Youth Commission. To me, that would be something I'd like to see occurring here soon, and I can stay, on top of in terms of being proactive about.
Okay, so we have the mayor and the vice mayor on A. Interest from the mayor and Councilmember Chateau on B, related to recommendations to enhance participation and engagement of youth and families.
Sure.
Okay, and then on C, this is a needs assessment that would be developed to identify opportunities to connect existing youth organizations and school-based efforts and provide recommendations for actionable strategies. So we have the mayor, vice mayor, and Councilmember Shuto interested.
Well, do you want to look at that one and I can step off of that one?
Yeah, I'm interested in this one, but I'm flexible.
No, I think I've got
If you- yeah.
a few others, so it'd be great to have you would do that.
I just
And-
want to mention that I still have a child at home.
Okay.
And goal 5D, 5D relates to updating zoning standards for daycare and senior housing for compliance with state law and to improve access. Councilmember
Sure.
Shuto
Great.
is identified there. Okay, I have a copy of this. I will quickly transmit this to the city clerk.
Well done. Thank you, everybody, for your efforts. I mean, this is remarkable. Okay, so we're going to move on to 10.4, consideration of approval of a resolution supporting the St. Helena Little League's fundraising efforts for improvements at Creighton Park, and this is prepared by
Before we move on, I think there was a letter that was sent to us, and I think it would be we'd be remiss. I'm sorry, just 2 minutes, not at least having a 2-minute discussion about Mary Stevenson's letter. I think we can go forward with what we have, but certainly the two two members, whatever it is, could meet with her and see what else she had in mind. Have a conversation there, not to ignore her letter. She thinks the work plan is not as robust as it should be in this area. I think this is an extremely ambitious work plan, and I think we have to be cognizant of our time commitment. So, but I do think that Ms. Stevenson makes a good point. At least we can reach out to her and see if there's other things that are capable of being absorbed into our work plan that are reasonable in terms of our time and commitments. That's all I'd have to offer there.
And from the staff side, what we're anticipating is bringing you a contract amendment with Erica Sklar to begin an outreach effort that builds on the white paper recommendations. And then when we have an assistant to the city manager position on board, that staff member we would anticipate having that person liaison on this effort from start to bottom on the goal number 2.
And I'm happy to participate as we go and perhaps have that initial meeting with Ms. Stevenson and start to make sure that we're outlining what we all feel needs to be outlined and moving forward. This is something I think we're all motivated to move forward on, so.
Could I ask if I could jump on to goal 2, B and C with David?
Yes.
Is that okay with you? Okay.
Please.
Okay, so we're ready to move on to the consideration of approval of a resolution supporting the St. Helena Little League's fundraising efforts for improvements at Crane Park. This is item 10.4, and this is Ms. Mitz.
In fact, the city manager is going to assist. So on March 12th, Jeff Blom, the president of St. Helena Little League, made a presentation regarding the needs of the Little League fields and surrounding facilities, and proposed a renovation project for the fields to correct drainage issues, replace the fencing, and construct a new building for the snack shack, concession stand, and restrooms. We've put together a supporting resolution for those efforts. We do see some opportunity to align the work that will be performed by our consultant with respect to a recreation facility visioning with this. And one of the first things that we'll want to do out of the gate is connect the Little League with that consultant and talk a little bit about this project and how it may potentially have synergies with the other project. But before you tonight is a resolution supporting their fundraising effort to move forward. And Jeff is here tonight if you'd like to say a few things.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. As I mentioned last time I was here, we are we're poised and ready to start raising funds for this. So tomorrow evening we have our board meeting, and at that time we have an email drafted out, which we will send through the league, through past participants in the league, and we are fully expecting to get a pretty favorable response from it. We also have a couple very interested parties in matching any of the fundraising we do with our brick display that I mentioned in our last meeting. So we're still very confident that we'll be able to raise the money to do the foundation, or to do the project that we spoke of. The gopher problem isn't getting any better. There was probably about 25 mounds out there that I had to kick around today before our game, and pardon my appearance, I just came off the field. But I just appreciate your support, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to field them.
Any questions from council?
You thanked us. We should thank you for your service to the community.
Oh, well, it's for the kids, and it's a lot of fun.
Thank you. Any other initial council comments?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, and thank you for pushing this forward and bringing it to us and giving us the opportunity to be supportive.
Good. Yeah.
So the staff recommendation is to adopt the resolution supporting the St. Helena Little League fundraising efforts for improvements at Crane Park. I would invite a motion.
Do we have public comment?
Oh, yes. Let me open it to public comment to see if there's any public comment. Seeing none, I will close the public comment. Thank you, Ms. Chateau. And I will invite a motion.
Just one point of clarification. Maybe it's my sensitivity to this issue, I don't know, but words matter. So the resolution basically says the City Council supports the fundraising efforts of the St. Helena Little League for improvements at Crane Park. I assume we also support the renovation project itself, or not? Because it seems a little like, well, yeah, we're supporting the fundraising. Could we beef that up maybe with just a few more words? And I know there's many details to work out, and maybe that was the intent, to limit it to the fundraising, but I just want to be clear when you take this around, in concept at least, I support this renovation project.
So supporting the St. Helena Little League's fundraising efforts for improvements at Crane Park.
Something about supporting the renovation project itself.
Okay. Can we word that in?
We can.
And maybe the specific part of Crane, I mean, it's not improvements at Crane, it's a specific project at Crane Park, right?
It's renovation of the fields to address drainage issues, replacing the fencing, and constructing a replacement snack shack, concession stand, and restrooms.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be more useful for your purposes.
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
So are we saying all of that, or can we just say Little League's fundraising efforts and project for improvements? Are we saying all of it?
I was planning to use lift the sentence that's right before the discussion. There's a sentence that references each of the specific components that were identified.
So add that in, yeah.
And I would like to have that specific language.
Very good.
Okay.
With that, is there a motion?
Move approval with the amended language.
I'll second.
And roll call?
Vice Mayor Doring?
Yes.
Councilmember Chateau?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Coberstein?
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth?
Yes. Play ball.
Once again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Thank you for being here.
Welcome.
Okay, we'll now move on to item new business, 11.1. This is consideration and proposed adoption of a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a professional services agreement with HydroScience engineers in an amount not to exceed $440,000 for owners representative of the City of St. Helena wastewater treatment and reclamation plant project to perform, to perform select engineering services, facilitate the procurement of a design build team, and to ensure that the design of the WWTRP project improvements are constructed in a manner and cost that meets the City of St. Helena's needs and budget in response to San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Board San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board Order R2-2016-004. And this is Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. And that is a mouthful. I know that. Feel free to start the clock anytime there, Cindy. This project is a continuation from last year, September of last year. And a little bit of background, in 2016, the State Regional Water Quality Control Board, or the Regional Water Quality Control Board, they're more just regionalized, they had issued a cease and desist order, and that order was, it established more stringent limitations on the effluent from the wastewater treatment plant. So at that time, they also required the city to develop a feasibility study. And in September 2018, last year, staff did present that feasibility study to council. It was approved or accepted by council, and subsequently council had directed staff to negotiate a contract with GHD for the conceptual design of the one of the alternatives. And there were two alternatives that were identified in that. The alternative that was selected was the trickling filter. So at that time, staff did negotiate with GHD. We received a scope of work and a scope and fee for that work. It was roughly $1.4 million. At that time, the mayor and vice mayor had made some suggestions that maybe we revisit it a little bit and look at some things, which staff did. At that time, we reached out to some of our neighbors. We did some research. We found that a design-build project may be more feasible and cost-effective for us. So before proceeding with reaching out to consultants for that scope of work, staff did contact the state. The state indicated that it is at the city's discretion of how they meet that cease and desist order. Further to that, we also reached out to USDA. They provide funding for the project, which we have been working with them on this project. And they also indicated that a design-build project is something that they do not oppose and that they could fund. So what we did then, staff reached out to 4 consultants. We contacted GHD, West Yost Associates, and Bennett Engineering, and also HydroScience engineers. GHD declined to propose. They indicated that they would like to propose on the larger project. West Yost indicated that they didn't have the staff and the capacity to get into that project. So Bennett, staff did meet with Bennett and HydroScience engineers. We had some discussions, developed a scope, identified some of the elements of the project. At that time, in those discussions, it was determined that HydroScience engineers were the preferred consultant. So in one of my pet peeves, and I do this every time, and maybe it's just the way that iCompass works, these darn things, the pages aren't numbered. So anyhow, in going through that, we identified some different phases of the project. Phase 1 with optional phase 2 tasks, as well as contingency, which HydroScience did include in contingency and Bennett did not. It's, again, if I had a page number, I could direct you to that. But the total cost of the contract, $440,000. That includes phase 1, task 1 through 4, optional phase 2, which was task 5 through 8 in the scope, and that totals $365,000, and then the contingency is $75,000. Brings that to $365,000, and then when we add all these things up, $440,000 for that contract. Bennett, as I said, did not include contingency in their scope or their proposal, and their total was $296,568. And looking at these two things, although the HydroScience proposal was slightly more, $68,000 more than Bennett, it's imperative to consider that in the phase 1 portion of this, where it's more cost effective for us to contract with HydroScience, the phase 1 portion really identifies as the feasibility part of it. It doesn't include those optional portions. So with that, staff does recommend that council direct city manager to approve a contract with HydroScience. And we do have Mr. Curtis Lamb here, he's principal for HydroScience Engineers, to answer any questions related to a design-build project, the methodology, the approach that would be taken, and the contrast with between a design-build and a progressive design-build, excuse me. So with that, I can answer any questions, or I can turn over to Curtis, and Curtis can answer some questions.
Are there any initial council questions? My thought is I received an email from a member of the public who is here tonight who had some questions, and my thought for efficiency's sake would be to open the floor for those questions and then have the engineer.
Absolutely.
I think, to me, that sounds like we might get a more efficient process that way if we try that.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Great.
If there's no objection. So I'm going to open the public comment.
Good evening. I'm Richard Wallach, a local resident for a little over a year. I have some concerns about the design-build approach that is being proposed. Not that I'm against it, but that there are some risks that I'm not certain everyone is aware of, and I thought I would give you some time to think about those things before we execute a contract. So my background. I've been in the engineering construction business for about 40 years, the last 30 of them on projects worldwide and nationally. I've done both design build and EPC, engineer, procure, construct, firm price contracts. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. My concern is the city of St. Helena resourced to do a design build. When I read the scope, and maybe I don't completely understand everything, every word that's in there, it's a long document, it appears that the city to a degree is going to delegate the administration of the second phase of the project to HydroScience. And when I have been involved in design build, that is an owner responsibility. So that is a concern to me. And so I went to the Design Build Industry Institute of America, who has a page about potential obstacles to what they call progressive design build. There are 4 that we ought to talk about. First one is government procurement regulations. Are there any requirements that the city must get firm prices on the work before awarding a contract? My understanding is the previous alternatives were about $14 million. This is probably going to be a bit more because the technology is more sound. So let's say it's 20. If it's a $20 million project, can you award design build to a firm for $20 million without pricing? Because that's what I understand is being proposed. So when you go to the design build, they say if the public authority has the ability to use qualification based selection, QBS, qualitative based selection, means you select the firm to do the design build based on technical qualifications, not price. Then it could be the optimal choice. However, if procurement regulations only allow the typical 2-phase best value source selection, then design build is probably not the best alternative. So that's one question. I don't know the city's regulations and how that big of a project would fall. I knew when I was overseas in Europe, this would have to have been built on a price award basis, not on a quality selection basis. So they also talk about, is it politically impractical to go out and bid or award a contract for $20 million without pricing? If I ran some numbers, if it's 20 million and there's 2,000 people to service, that's 10 grand per service. You divide that over 20 years and that comes out about $40 a month per house. So that's significant in the water rate. I don't know what the numbers are, but just to get it in the ballpark, that's the number I just pulled up. So the concern is if we bid out a $20 million project design build with no pricing until we get probably in the 40 to 50% design complete before you have enough data to get firm pricing, and it's too late to turn around. There's my 4 minutes.
Well, if you could just very briefly state the last two questions, and then maybe that will give us some.
They have the other thing on the Design Build Institute is subcontractor procurement. You normally, on design build, want the subcontractor to participate to a degree in the design effort to reduce costs. But again, you're favoring a contractor before you awarded the work. And the last one on there, things of concern, is if your previous approaches has been to award it on a firm price basis, are you really comfortable moving down something that you don't have experience with? And I don't know if you do or don't, but that was the concern. If you don't have adequate experience, do we want to take on this big of a project with design build? So with that, I'll stop.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Actually, what the proposal is that HydroScience acts as the owner's representative. That we would develop the conceptual design, which is needed to move forward with the full design build. There would be a phase where where HydroScience would be the owner's rep, and that's throughout the project. But they wouldn't do the construction or the full design. The contract would be to develop the documents that are required to do that design build. So bridging documents, we would do an RFP, we would go out to bid on that. So it's all that the meat and potatoes of it up front. What are we going to build? What do we want to build? And then once we get that in place, then we would bid it out to be the full design and construction.
But then we still, as the owner, have control. We still have control at that point.
That's correct. Further to that, I'd like to point out that in attachment 3, I did include the California Public Contract Code 22160-22169, which clearly it identifies that we couldn't do that. We couldn't say, hey, HydroScience, do this stuff up front, and then we want you to design it and build it. It's just not allowed in the contract code. And in attachment 4 is the statement of qualifications for HydroScience. They've been involved in many design build projects. In fact, some award-winning projects in Davis, involved in American Canyon as well. And I've also have experience with design build. So I will turn it over to Curtis to add a little bit more to that, as he's going to have more information in that regard.
Thanks for being here.
Right. Thank you, Felix. Thank you, Council. My name is Curtis Lamb. I'm a principal with HydroScience Engineers. And there were a lot of questions that were brought up. And just because you're getting into the design build realm, there's a lot of different options and pathways that you could use to select a design build team. And this team, for this design build team, includes a contractor and an engineer who will actually design the overall improvements and what the contractor will construct. And so there's a couple different ways to do design build. You can do a traditional design build where you can select a contractor engineer team based on price, based on qualifications, or based on what's called a best value, which is sort of a blend of those things. Or you could do a progressive design build where you basically work collaboratively with a contractor engineer team to basically advance the design. You get it to a certain percentage of design complete, and then a contractor engineer team would basically give you a guaranteed maximum price. There's a lot of different pathways that you can go, and our role here is to sort of serve as an extension of staff and your representatives to assist in developing the right documents to guide the city on what the right procurement method to move forward would be on something like this. And so as part of our scope of work for this, we're going to be preparing all those documents to select that design build team to figure out what the right pathway is and to serve as your representative to those contractors to do a lot of that daily work, to interface with Felix and staff at the city, and to basically act as your representative going forward.
Are there any council questions, comments?
Well, I have a several questions, which is this has been really educational. So thanks to the public works staff and to our citizen here for raising issues. There was sort of a question about sort of design build versus that it's sort of a more expensive process ultimately, but on the other hand, you're getting the spec that the project needs. Can you talk about that, or Felix? Can you talk about that, or Ms. Smithies?
Well, I can. If Curtis is there, I could touch his experience and then I can show my experiences. Oh, sorry. Well, as part of the evaluation process was exactly that, because of the project overall, at the feasibility level, it was $14.1 million. And when staff looked at it, in the research that we did, we found that design build could be more cost effective. And in fact,
even on a pure dollars basis.
That's correct.
Okay.
And there may be more upfront costs, but you catch things on the back end. Design build projects are typically faster. They don't take as long. American Canyon utilized some of that. I don't know if the Davis plant was, but I know Curtis can speak to that. But that's the reason that we're suggesting this route, is to try to save some money and get this project done, hopefully under $14 million. And at the very least, in discussions, we said we're going to exercise due diligence, and originally $14.1 million. If we come in and once we get to that phase one, the phase one portion of it, that's what we're going to know. We're going to know what are we looking at cost-wise? 14 million, 10 million, 12 million. So at that point, it's we still have other options, if you will, but ultimately it's to reduce costs.
And does this design build by having an owner's rep in a way give staff additional leverage, but also sort of greater control over the process?
It does. It gives the city as a whole better control of the process, because in that we can decide what we want. We can say we want a certain pump, a certain type of valve. We want these type of things. So there's a lot more control there, and with costs as well, because we can say, hey, we don't we have another valve or another pump or something that's more cost effective that we'd like. So it allows more control, in my opinion.
And Mr. Hernandez, have you worked with these folks before in a prior relationship?
Yes, I have.
Okay. With which, if you don't mind, with what project?
I was with Dry Creek Rancheria for 9 years.
Okay.
And there they did construct. It was a design build project.
Okay.
It was a sequence batch reactor, and I did work with HydroScience in that regard, and in MPDS permitting and compliance.
Great. And what was the scale of that project, if you were allowed to say?
It was probably half the size of this.
About half the size.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other council questions, comments? Mr. Prestwich?
It might also be helpful to speak to briefly the distinction between the trickling filter alternative and the design build of a package treatment plant and its influence on price and design challenges.
Well, as we research things, the trickling filters they're kind of going away. People are removing them, and that's what GHD had proposed. With this particular system, and in this, the two options, say, as we got direction before to negotiate a contract with GHD and that feasibility, what the alternative two was, I would equate that to taking Porsche parts and putting them on a Volkswagen. I mean, we have a very old system. It's antiquated. Where this approach, the city will have an entirely new wastewater treatment plant that meets tertiary requirements. Unrestricted reuse, we can reuse that water later on. If we have neighbors that want that water, we could even sell it if we wanted to. But and the operating costs may be a little bit more with an SBR or an MBR, but overall, when you're looking at doing a retrofitting an older system, I mean, I think that having that and those older trickling filters is technology that's kind of going by the wayside. So as far as operating costs, long term, SBR, MBR maybe have more operating costs, But up front, and the longevity of it is, I mean, it's kind of a, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, dollar cost analysis or something along those lines.
So this is essentially sort of a current approach to the problem rather than bolting on something to an existing setup that is just no longer something that people do. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay.
And we're still going to be able to benefit from the existing pond system integrating with the new technology. Is that correct?
Well, Curtis and I were discussing it in the back, and I'm hoping that things would be approved tonight. But that's what the idea is, because, as you know, we have a lot of I&I, so intrusion coming into the system. We had over 5 million gallons coming into the wastewater treatment plant with these big rain events. So the idea is to use existing ponds as flow equalization. It comes in, we absorb that flow, and then we bring it back through the plant after the flows have subsided.
Right. Mr. Wallach, does that answer some questions? Can I reopen the public comment if there's any response or further question?
Yes, just a quick one. I guess you've got phase 1 and 2 in your proposals. Phase 1 is the alternative evaluation, and I would like to see the proposal of how we're going to proceed to phase 2 clarified before we go beyond phase 1. In other words, if we have several alternatives on pricing, are we going to firm price subcontractors? Is the design build firm going to do construction management, et cetera? So I think we, as the city, should make sure that we understand how phase 2 is going to be executed so that the phase 1 documents support that. And that was my main concern, is that let's all get aligned on what we're going to do, what's going to be firm price, what's going to be qualification based, and get all our documents lined up so that everything's coordinated.
So as we're working through phase 1, we're laying out the options for phase 2.
Right.
And if I may add, it's in phase, or the task 1, to bring the draft concept report to council for concurrence and direction.
Great.
So
Okay.
that there is that mechanism in place in the contract.
Well, thank you very much. I'll close the public comment. Any final council comment? Question?
How much of this contract to GHD was spent down, this nearly 1.4 million, if any?
None, because we didn't bring it back to you.
Okay, there's a sense here to these consulting services were in support of City of St. Helena Phase 1, led me to believe that they're, but you answered my question, none. Is it, I didn't have the time to look up these two terms. Maybe somebody could explain in layperson's terminology what a sequencing batch reactor and tertiary filtration and then a tertiary membrane bioreactor are, just in very general terms. I know someone's going to ask me when I go home.
In layman's terms, a sequencing batch reactor is essentially a vessel that you introduce your screened wastewater that comes into your plant. It goes in there, it goes through a cycle, a multi-step cycle, where basically you get primary and secondary treatment of that wastewater in one unit. And while that unit is is reacting or being treated, the other unit is being filled with what's coming into the plant. The filtration basically takes the effluent from that process and filters out a lot of the waste materials before it goes out to the outfall. A membrane bioreactor is a little bit different in that you basically use the bugs in the vessel, and then you have your primary and secondary treatment in an activated sludge type process, and then you basically separate those bugs from the wastewater through a membrane. You basically pull the water through a membrane, or there's different types of membranes that do the same thing. But basically you separate the water from all the materials, and you have a tertiary effluent coming out of your membrane bioreactor process that you can then disinfect and then send to your outfall.
I got about 80% of that, but enough. I have a general understanding, and you kept it clean, so that was nice.
You know more about wastewater than the average person now.
Did that make you more comfortable in this? Oh, yeah. Okay, good.
I think it's like a cheesecloth in kitchen tools. That's what I got out of it.
It's a modern approach to solve your wastewater needs for many years in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to invite a motion, but before I do, I just want to say thank you to everybody who has worked on this, who has thought about it, who has considered it. I think it's a remarkable step forward for us, not only in dealing with past problems, but in stepping forward into this world of tertiary, being able to provide that. And I just want to thank everybody very much. We're not there yet, but this is a significant step, and it's appreciated. Everybody who's had anything to do with this.
Mr. Wallach, I also appreciate your comments, and I would encourage you to stay involved in this process because you may be helpful to us in sort of interpreting some of these things. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. So I will invite a motion on the recommended action. Should I read this whole thing, or can I say the recommended action?
Move approval of the recommended action.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Doring?
Yes.
Councilmember Koberstein?
Yes.
Shuto?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth?
Yes. Thank you again for being here. Okay, we're going to move on to 11.2, which is City Council review and consideration of potential grant projects available under Senate Bill 2, the Building Jobs and Home Act. Mr. Hausch?
Thank you, Mayor Ellsworth, members of the council. SB 2, or the Senate Bill 2, Building Jobs and Homes Act, was aimed at addressing the state's housing shortage and high housing costs with the goal of establishing a permanent funding source. And half of the funds generated in the first year is available to local governments using the same formula as the CDBG grant funding process, which we do have some familiarity with. The goal of this is to provide some funds for local governments to prepare, adopt, and implement plans and process improvements to streamline housing approvals and accelerate housing production. And staff identified this as a grant opportunity to advance the city's 3-year goal of stabilizing, maintaining, and improving access to housing within the community. The minimum award for this grant is $25,000. The maximum award for small localities, which we qualify as, is up to $125,000. And it's worth noting that the first year is non-competitive. So essentially, if we get in a grant application that meets the requirements, we're going to get the funds. There's a list of eligible activities in the staff report. These can include updates to the general plan, community plans, specific plans, or other local planning efforts to implement sustainable community strategies, etc. Updates to zoning ordinances, environmental analysis, which is essentially to try to kind of pre-entitle a site, and then make local process improvements. So staff provided a summary of 4 options in the staff report, one of which would be a downtown specific plan to essentially intensify land uses in a specific area. We chose the downtown with the goal of increasing opportunities for housing in that area. A zoning code update, which would take the policies that are in the general plan, 2040 general plan, and the housing element, which is adopted, and implement those in the general or into the zoning code specific to housing. Anecdotally, staff has been kind of asking around, trying to price what a zoning code update will be. There's a variety of ways to do it, but if we were to just go to a consulting firm that specializes in zoning code updates, I've reached out to 2 folks. Both of them quoted me a $500,000 number. So that's just anecdotal, obviously not a bid, but it was something that was enlightening to staff, given that we need to do that project. So. This staff saw this as an opportunity to essentially supplement that cost and potentially jumpstart it. Again, the targeted CEQA review, this funds could be used to kind of pre-entitle a site. From the staff perspective, we don't necessarily have a site that is progressed enough through community engagement to identify as a high housing opportunity site that would pre-entitle. And then process improvements, while they would be great. Staff is kind of focusing on the first 2 as the primary or the most beneficial uses of funds, one of which because the council has identified an interest in kind of intensifying land uses on targeted sites throughout the community, and a specific plan could be used to do that. Or two, we've already committed to doing a zoning code update as a part of the process after the general plan, and so this seemed like a huge opportunity to assist with the cost of those. And then just lastly, there is an option for partnerships, and the County of Napa has been discussing with several other jurisdictions kind of creating some off-the-shelf ADU plans or accessory dwelling unit plans that could be kind of pre-entitled or pre-approved, even pre-engineered, and to where someone could just come with a site plan and we could assist them with providing the plans to construct an ADU on their property. And then obviously there's any other ideas that the council wants to direct us to, but these funds are first come, first served, and the notice of funding availability just dropped, I think, last week. So we're interested and eager in moving forward. Mandy Kellogg in the finance department is ready to move forward with the grant application. We've been talking about it. And we've also been talking to Erica Sklar, who had a little bit of funds remaining on her contract with the city. And so with that, we're interested in getting some council direction. And I would like to point out with regards to the partnerships, City of Calistoga does not anticipate filing an application. However, this is my anecdotal information. However, that funding availability is there for them, and their allotment of up to $125,000 could fund a partnership program that was region-wide or county-wide. And so I'm bringing that up because while the council may not prioritize that application, we may dovetail in with the county and other jurisdictions to participate in that and try to kind of double dip a little bit and get benefits from both sides. So just so you know, if you see us participating in those, even though you haven't prioritized that as an application, know that it's not taking away from any funding that you do prioritize.
Thoughts?
I think that's great. Do that double dipping thing you just talked about. That sounds great. But my first priorities, I agree, are downtown specific plan and the zoning code update.
When would the grant monies be available?
The funding is available now, so we have to file our application. And it's my understanding they intend to start payout by the fall.
So it would be payout by September 1st?
Potentially.
And because of that quick turnaround, does that imply that it should be things that are directly in front of us, right?
So, again, staff sees we kind of look to the council goals that were established as motivation and inspiration for what types of applications, kind of a lens to look at available applications through, whether it would be a specific plan or a zoning code, which has already been prioritized. We feel either one of them could be undertaken, but obviously $125,000 may not be enough to cover the full cost of either. It's worth noting.
I'm in favor of doing the zoning code because I think it keeps us to our work plan for this year instead of expanding into something new that's not on the list. And I had envisioned that maybe this zoning code would be done in phases, and maybe the 125 will go a fair way to dealing with the residential district regulations, and also downtown where we will probably be allowing mixed use and that kind of thing. So that would be, I think, the best fit for the work plan that we have in front of us.
Mr. Doring?
I don't have a whole lot of enlightenment here. I tend to agree, I think, with Councilmember Koberstein on the zoning update is necessary. It's in the work plan. Seems like a nice fit. The only idea that I was thinking about when you raised the issue of partnering with Calistoga, I think the more likely partner is Yountville. But I don't know that that's ready for prime time. Yountville has been talking throughout the county about building a tremendous amount of affordable housing at the Veterans Home that would serve all of us, and is asking for partners quietly. It's not been, out there, but Mayor Dunbar has been talking about that. And so it's something to keep in mind for the future. I don't think we're ready for that yet. They probably are not. I would encourage us to have a conversation with their planning director and see how we can fit within that. It seems like, Yountville's so far away, but housing's housing in the Up Valley. But I I think at this point, I think the thing that's ready for us right now is zoning. And if we can cut into that $500,000, which is, yeah, that's a shock to me. I was thinking maybe 200,000, so yeah.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Would you like to entertain a motion to go beyond 9 p.m.?
Yes, I will entertain that motion. I know that we'll be quick and efficient with our decision-making. If I could hear a motion. Do we want to get to the end of this?
10 for? Or we just,
Half an hour? Yeah.
okay, we'll finish before then.
Yeah.
I'll move that we extend.
Second.
Councilmember Koberstein?
Yes.
Shuto?
Yes.
Knutson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Doring?
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth?
Yes. I'm supportive of that, of applying it to the zoning, if that seems to be a place that it will have direct action and help us move forward.
Do we need to choose one? Is that what you're saying?
So staff was looking for direction, essentially on either the zoning or the some of the other options. Staff agrees with Councilmember Koberstein and the other council members. It is the most in line with what we've already committed to.
Mm-hmm. But so can we only do one? Is what I'm
Oh, so there is potential to break up the applications to get multiple funding, multiple individual grants. However, given that either or any of the topics that have been discussed are likely to exceed the cost of the $125,000, staff would recommend kind of utilizing the full chunk of the funds.
So I would support that, going towards the zoning, but also with the idea that you're looking for this discussion with Calistoga and seeing where that might lead.
And it's all the regional jurisdictions.
Okay. So do we have a motion?
No motion, direction.
Oh, this is just direction. Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Knutson.
So staff, here's the consensus of the council being to support application for a zoning code update.
Yep.
Great.
Very good. Okay, we'll move on to 11.3, City Manager Report on Schedule and Format for Purely Informational Measure F Public Information Workshops and Open Houses.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a brief receive and file report on the schedule and format for purely informational Measure F public information workshops and open houses. We are scheduling 2 Measure F public information workshops, one on April 27th from 10 a.m. to noon at the fire station, and secondly on May 1st from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the fire station. These are not forums for a debate over the merits of the measure. It's simply an informational workshop to walk through a PowerPoint that I will present. We'll have an attorney there helping to answer any questions that people have. We will not schedule this as a special meeting of the City Council. The staff will answer questions and help voters understand the measure before them. The public information open houses are really a continuation of that same effort. These will be simply drop-in format events on May 9th, May 13th, and May 30th from 4 to 6 p.m. at City Hall. And we'll have some exhibits, we'll have information, including the impartial analysis, arguments for and against. We'll make information available to the community. We will also prepare a Measure F informational website on the city's web page. And that's about it. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Any council questions? Any public comments? Seeing nobody here. Bring it back to the council. And so the direction is to receive and file. And so.
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Appreciate it.
It's partly an advertisement as well, of course.
Very good. Well, thank you. So we'll move on to 11.4, authorize submittal of letter of support for Assembly Constitutional Amendment ACA 1 Aguiar-Curry. This is Mr. Prestwich as well.
Thank you. So this is an Assembly constitutional amendment that our Assembly member is co-authoring to reduce the vote threshold for projects from 2/3 to 55% for most local general obligation bonds and special taxes, which today require a 2/3 vote for approval. These types of projects benefit affordable housing and public infrastructure types of projects. So this is something that may be of keen interest to this city as we begin to think about public infrastructure and housing. This is something that in the year 2000, school districts, there was a constitutional ballot measure approved by California voters. So school infrastructure has enjoyed a 55% threshold for almost 20 years. This same concept is being brought to local governments in most cases for reducing this on projects related to housing and public infrastructure. And the recommendation is to pass a motion authorizing submittal of a letter of support for this measure.
Is there any initial council comment, discussion?
I was looking for David for direction. I know that you've gone through this sentence by sentence.
Yes. I mean, no, I'm sorry, I haven't read it sent word by word, but I'm very supportive of the town of St. Helena adding its voice to hopefully an overwhelming, thunderous support for reducing the requirement from 2/3 to 55%.
I'm really in support of it as well.
And Mr. Prestwich, it's my understanding that the League of California Cities also.
Yes, on the fact sheet that was provided by Assemblymember Aguiar-Curry, there are a number of organizations that are listed as support, including the League of California Cities, several cities, and various organizations. I'm counting about more than 40 here.
Ms. Koberstein?
I just had a question. If this passes, then when does it appear on the statewide ballot? Is it in 2020, in November? Or would it be in the primary in March?
I believe I have this in the staff. I think it's November 2020.
It is, yeah.
Okay. November 2020.
Well, I certainly believe that lowering the threshold and making it more achievable and opening the door for us to get more accomplished. So I'm certainly in support of it. Is there any other comment? And if
I just want to make a point. You know, there's some in the community that do not think this council is sufficiently concerned about affordable housing, and I think that this, by passing something like this, it does reflect that this council is very concerned and very committed to building more affordable housing in this community. And so I would support it.
Very good. Now,
Absolutely. That's one of the main reasons. And the infrastructure projects for our town.
so I would invite a motion at this point.
I move.
Actually, can I make a philosophical
Yes,
point before
you may.
we depart and the vice mayor gets to enjoy the rest of his evening? You know, one of the nice things about sort of procurement of infrastructure is that you really try, I mean, essentially you're providing value over time. And part of the advantage of having, you know, or housing or whatever is that if you're able to match the term to the funding, it's incredibly useful. And oftentimes we spend current dollars for things that have value over 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And thank goodness that our predecessors did some of those things. But matching term to usefulness is, I think, a really, it's helpful for us to educate ourselves about that, particularly when we think about City Hall or affordable housing, things like that. There is a lifespan of these items, and sometimes it's appropriate to match our funding to that lifespan.
Thank you for that.
Agreed. I also think we pay too much taxes, but that's another story for another day.
So we have a
Okay.
motion.
Yeah, I move that we authorize submittal of the letter of support for ACA 1.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilor Chateau?
Yes.
Koberstein?
Yes.
Knutson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Doring?
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth?
Yes. And with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. I'm going to thank everybody very much for the patience and participation and the effort. Thank you for that bee rescue.